My parents secretly spent weeks coordinating with my brothers to stand up and object at my wedding ceremony to humiliate my bride. So, at 6 a.m., on the day of the wedding, I moved the entire event to a new venue and let my toxic family show up to an empty room. My name is Liam. I'm 28 years old, and a few months ago, I pulled off the most stressful, chaotic, and ultimately satisfying vanishing act in the history of matrimony. I didn't just cancel my wedding, I relocated it, entirely behind my family's back, 6 hours before I was supposed to stand at the altar and say I do. To understand why I did something that sounds completely unhinged, you need to understand the deeply flawed dynamic I grew up with in Austin, Texas. We were the picture-perfect suburban family on paper. We had the big limestone house, the manicured lawn that was mowed twice a week, 2 parents who attended every PTA meeting, and 3 boys who played sports. My older brothers, Derek and Connor, were the main characters of our family. I was, for all intents and purposes, an NPC in my own home. Derek was the firstborn golden child. He was the star athlete, got a business degree from UT Austin, and landed a tech sales job making $180,000 a year right out of college. He could do absolutely no wrong. Connor was the middle child, the charismatic class clown who leaned hard into his role. He was the guy who could talk his way out of a fender bender and into a free steak dinner in the same afternoon. Everyone loved Connor because Connor made it impossible not to love him. Then there was me, the quiet youngest brother, the one my mother would introduce to her country club friends by saying, "And this is our youngest," with a vague wave of her manicured hand, treating me like a slightly disappointing houseplant she hadn't gotten around to throwing out. I'm not saying my parents didn't love me, but they loved me in a distracted, exhausted way. I learned early on that my parents' attention was a finite resource, and the tank was always empty by the time they got to me. When Derek turned 16, he got a brand new car. When Connor turned 16, he got Derek's old car, which was still incredibly nice. When I turned 16, I got a bus pass and a pat on the back. When I brought home a report card with straight A's, my dad would glance at it, say, "Good job, bud," and go back to watching the Cowboys game. When Derek brought home a B, in a prerequisite class, they took him out for a massive celebratory dinner at a high-end steakhouse. I didn't let it destroy me. I went to Texas State, got a degree in cybersecurity, and built a solid life for myself. I got a great job as a senior analyst, bought my own condo, and cultivated a group of friends who actually noticed when I walked into a room. And then I met Maya. Maya is a veterinary technician from Waco. She's 5'5", has curly brown hair, freckles across her nose, and possesses a laugh that makes you feel like you've known her your entire life. She volunteers at a local dog rescue, survives exclusively on iced coffee, and remembers the absolute smallest details about people. She's the kind of person who will listen to you mention a book in passing and then buy it for you 3 weeks later just because she thought you'd like it. I met her at a backyard barbecue hosted by a mutual friend, and by the time the sun went down, I was entirely gone for her. We dated for 2 years before I proposed on a quiet Sunday morning at Lady Bird Lake. She cried, I cried, and her rescue dog tried to eat the ring box. It was perfect. When I told my family we were engaged, the reaction was freezing cold. My dad gave me a stiff pat on the shoulder and said, "Hope you're ready for the financial burden." Derek smirked, leaned against the kitchen counter, and joked that I was locking her down before she realized her actual market value. Connor just gave me a thumbs up from the couch. But the real nightmare was my mother. She had decided, instantly, that Maya wasn't good enough for us. My parents aren't royalty, my dad sells corporate insurance and my mom is a retired real estate agent, but my mother acts like we're part of some elite Texas dynasty. Maya's parents ran a small HVAC business in Waco. In my mother's eyes, Maya was blue-collar, unrefined, and entirely unworthy of the family name she guarded so fiercely. The passive aggression was relentless. My mom would make pointed comments about Maya's clothes at family dinners, asking if she was going to wear that to a nice restaurant. She'd ask if Maya ever planned to get a real career instead of playing with stray mutts all day. Maya handled it beautifully. She'd smile, deflect the insult with a joke, and then quietly cry in the passenger seat of my car on the way home. I hated myself for not screaming at my mother, but a lifetime of being trained to keep the peace had paralyzed me. Confronting my family felt like trying to breathe underwater. When wedding planning started, it turned into an absolute war zone. My mom wanted a 250-person black tie event at her country club. Maya and I wanted an 80-person rustic wedding at a restored winery just outside of Austin. My mom tried to hijack everything. She tried to veto Maya's dress because it wasn't traditional enough. She tried to force us to use her caterer. I finally snapped at a Sunday dinner 4 months before the wedding. My mom made a snide remark about how Maya's family probably didn't understand the etiquette of hosting a proper event. I slammed my fork down, looked my mother dead in the eye, and told her that we were doing things our way, and if she couldn't be supportive, she could stay home. The table went dead silent. My dad stared at his plate. Derek rolled his eyes. Connor suddenly found the ceiling fascinating. My mom burst into theatrical tears, accused me of breaking her heart, and stormed out of the dining room. After that night, my family froze me out. Communication dropped to zero unless I initiated it. Family dinners became stilted, awkward affairs where everyone talked around me like I was a ghost. I naively told myself they'd get over it. I told myself that once the wedding day arrived, they would see how happy Maya made me and they would finally come around. I was an absolute idiot. Update 1. The rehearsal dinner went smoothly enough. My parents were frosty but polite. My brothers gave generic toasts that were mediocre but completely inoffensive. I went back to the hotel feeling a massive sense of relief. Maya fell asleep almost immediately, exhausted from the stress of the day. At 2:15 a.m., my phone buzzed on the nightstand. It was my cousin, Chloe. Chloe is my mom's sister's daughter, and she is the only person in my extended family who actually treats me like a human being. She's fierce, fiercely loyal, and she adored Maya from day one. Chloe is not a 2 a.m. caller. She is a phone on silent by 9:30 p.m. kind of person. When I saw her name glowing in the dark, my blood ran absolutely cold. I slipped out of bed, walked into the hotel bathroom, and answered the phone. Chloe? What's wrong? Her voice was trembling with rage. Liam, you need to sit down. I have to tell you something, and you cannot freak out until I finish. What happened? I asked. My heart hammering against my ribs. After you and Maya left the rehearsal dinner, your mom called an emergency family meeting in the hotel lobby, Chloe said, her breath hitching. She sat everyone down, your dad, Derek, Connor, Aunt Sarah, Uncle Dave. She had this whole speech prepared. She told them she couldn't in good conscience let this wedding happen without speaking up. She said Maya has manipulated you, isolated you, and is only marrying you for your tech salary. My stomach plummeted into the floorboards. What is she going to do? She wants the family to intervene during the ceremony, Chloe whispered. When the Reverend asks if anyone objects, your mother is going to stand up. Liam, she wrote a speech. She showed it to me on her iPad. It's 3 pages long. She plans to list all the reasons Maya is unfit for your family, right there in front of everyone. She genuinely thinks that once she lays it all out, you'll wake up and cancel the wedding on the spot. I couldn't breathe. The bathroom walls felt like they were closing in on me. Who else is in on this? That's the worst part, Chloe said, her voice breaking. Your dad agreed to back her up. Derek said he'd chime in because he thinks it'll be a good reality check for you. Connor didn't volunteer to speak, but he nodded along and didn't defend you. My mom tried to stop them, told them they were insane, but your mom shut her down entirely. They are going to ambush you at the altar, Liam. I thanked Chloe, hung up the phone, and slid down the bathroom wall until I was sitting on the cold tile. I felt like I was suffocating. My own family, the people who were supposed to love me unconditionally, had spent the evening after my rehearsal dinner plotting to publicly humiliate the woman I loved on the most important day of our lives. This wasn't impulsive. This was a calculated, premeditated attack. I sat there in the dark for an hour. I thought about calling my mom and screaming at her. But she'd just cry, play the victim, and figure out a different way to ruin the day. I thought about canceling everything. But why should Maya lose her dream wedding because my family was a toxic nightmare? Maya had spent months picking out flowers, writing her vows on index cards, and dreaming of this day. I wasn't going to let them steal it from her. Then, at 3:30 a.m., a terrifyingly clear thought crystallized in my mind. A beautiful, absolutely unhinged idea. I wasn't going to cancel the wedding. I wasn't going to confront my family. I was going to move the entire wedding. Different venue, same day, same time. And I simply was not going to tell my family where it was. I walked back into the bedroom and gently shook Maya awake. She blinked at me, groggy and confused. Babe? What time is it? It's almost 4 a.m, I said quietly. I need you to listen to me. I told her everything. Every single word Chloe had said. The hotel lobby meeting, the 3-page speech, my dad's betrayal, and my brother's absolute complicity. I watched Maya's face transition from sleepy confusion to profound heartbreak, and finally, to a cold, calculated fury. Maya is a sweet person, but she's also a vet tech who wrestles angry 80-pound German shepherds for a living. She does not panic. When she gets quiet, she gets strategic. What are we doing? She asked, her voice dangerously calm. I want to change the venue, I said. Today. Right now. We move the wedding, and we don't tell my family. We let them show up to an empty room. Maya didn't even blink. She reached over, grabbed her phone from the nightstand, and said, I'm calling my mother. If you ever need to coordinate a Black Ops military extraction, hire a former PTA president from Texas. Maya's mom, Brenda, was awake by 4:15 a.m. By 4:30 a.m., she was in our hotel room with a legal pad, 3 different colored pens, and a terrifying glint in her eye. This woman had spent her entire life preparing for a crisis she could organize her way out of, and she was thriving. Right? Brenda said, clicking her pen. The original venue was the winery. We need a backup location immediately. I had one. My uncle Marcus, my dad's older brother, who was entirely estranged from my parents because he couldn't stand my mother's snobbery, owned a gorgeous 1.5-acre ranch out in the hill country. It had a massive covered pavilion, a small lake, and string lights strung through the oak trees. He had offered it to us months ago, but we'd politely declined to keep the peace with my mom. At 5:45 a.m., I called him. "Uncle Marcus? It's Liam. I know it's incredibly early, but is your ranch available today?" He sounded raspy and entirely confused. "Liam? Son, it's before dawn. Why? I need to move my wedding. I'll explain the details later, but my parents are planning to crash the ceremony and object to humiliate Maya." There was a long pause. Then, I heard the sound of a truck engine starting in the background. "I always said your mother was a snake." Marcus grunted. "Get your people out here. I'll fire up the smoker and get the pavilion cleared." By 6 a.m., the wedding was officially moved. The next 6 hours were a blur of adrenaline, black coffee, and pure spite. Brenda called the florist and calmly explained the situation. The florist was so scandalized by the gossip that she agreed to reroute the delivery for free. Brenda called the caterer, offered him an extra $300 in cash, and promised him leftover brisket from Marcus's smoker. He grumbled, but he was in. I grabbed my old phone, the one my family had the number for, and shoved it deep into my suitcase. I used Maya's backup phone to text every single guest who wasn't part of my immediate family. I sent a mass message: "Emergency venue change. Please see the new address below. Do not inform Liam's parents." At 12:30 p.m., guests started arriving at Uncle Marcus's ranch. It was breathtaking. The pavilion overlooked the water, Marcus's wife had set out dozens of folding chairs, and the Texas sun was shining beautifully. Everyone who arrived hugged me fiercely. Some looked at me with pity, but most looked at me with deep respect. My buddy Greg brought a cooler of beer and said, "Dude, this is either the best decision you've ever made or a complete disaster. Either way, I'm drinking." Chloe arrived at 1 p.m., looking absolutely exhausted. She practically tackled me. "Your mom texted me an hour ago asking if I was at the winery yet." Chloe laughed, wiping a tear from her eye. "I told her I was running late. She has no idea." At 2 p.m., the exact time the ceremony was supposed to start, I stood at the altar. Reverend Thomas, a family friend of Maya's who had taken the frantic 6 a.m. venue change completely in stride, smiled at me. The music started. Maya walked down the grassy aisle on her father's arm, wearing the dress my mother had hated, looking so beautiful it actually made my chest ache. When Reverend Thomas asked if anyone can show just cause why they may not be lawfully joined together, let them speak now, there was only the sound of the wind in the trees and the distant chirp of birds. No speeches. No objections. No family intervention. Just peace. We said our vows, we exchanged rings, we kissed, and we were married. While we were taking our photos by the lake, Chloe got the full play-by-play from an aunt who had stayed behind to spy on the original venue. At 1:30 p.m., my mother, father, Derek, and Connor had arrived at the restored winery, dressed to the nines. My mother had her clutch purse tucked under her arm, presumably holding her 3-page manifesto. They walked into the venue and found nothing. No chairs. No flowers. No guests. No groom. My mom called my old phone 22 times. My dad called me 10 times. Derek sent a barrage of texts ranging from times, "Where the hell are you?" to times, "Mom is having a panic attack, call us right now." Connor sent one text that just said times, "bro." When it finally dawned on my mother that the wedding was happening somewhere else, and that she had been deliberately excluded, she completely lost her mind. According to the aunt, my mother stood in the middle of the empty winery courtyard in her $800 dress, her face red with rage, and screamed, "He will pay for this for the rest of his natural life." They never found us. We danced, we ate barbecue, we drank cheap beer, and we celebrated until midnight. It was the best night of my life. Update 2. Maya and I left for our honeymoon in New Orleans the next morning. I didn't turn my family phone back on until we were sitting in a cafe eating beignets on day 3. I had 147 unread text messages and 64 missed calls. I read exactly 0 of them, powered the phone back down, and ordered another coffee. When we got back to Austin a week later, the real war began. My mother had spent the entire week crafting a masterful victim narrative. She called every extended family member and family friend, sobbing hysterically. She claimed that Maya was an evil, controlling manipulator who had brainwashed me into abandoning my family on my wedding day. She conveniently omitted the part where she had written a literal manifesto to ruin the ceremony. But she underestimated Chloe. Chloe went on a scorched earth campaign. Whenever someone posted a vague, passive-aggressive status on Facebook about praying for family, Chloe was in the comments with timestamps, screenshots, and receipts. She told everyone exactly what my mother had planned. Within 2 weeks, the tide turned drastically. Half of my extended family stopped speaking to my parents. Maya and I sat down and decided on our boundaries. I wasn't going to cut my family off entirely, but I wasn't going to be a doormat anymore. I sent a group text to my parents and brothers. I kept it brief and clinical. I told them I knew about the planned objection. I told them that until I received a genuine, unreserved apology that specifically acknowledged their actions and included Maya by name, they were not welcome in my life. Derek was the first to react. He called me furious. "You embarrassed Mom in front of the whole family, Liam. You're acting like a child." She brought a 3-page speech to ruin my wedding, Derek, I replied coldly. And you were going to help her. Don't ever call my phone again unless it starts with an apology. I hung up. My mom's response came in the mail 3 days later. It was a 5-page handwritten letter. It was a masterclass in narcissistic deflection. She talked about how much she sacrificed for me, how her heart was broken, and how she only planned the intervention because she was terrified of losing her baby boy to the wrong path. She didn't use Maya's name once. She didn't apologize. She just justified her cruelty. I threw it in the shredder. Months passed. Maya and I settled into married life. We adopted a second rescue dog, a goofy golden retriever mix named Buster. I got a promotion at work. We hosted game nights. Life was incredibly peaceful without the constant weight of my family's expectations dragging me down. Then, on a rainy Tuesday evening, there was a knock on our door. I looked through the peephole and felt my stomach drop. It was my dad. He looked soaked, exhausted, and about 10 years older than the last time I saw him. I opened the door. He stood on the porch, his hands shoved deep into his jacket pockets. "Liam," he said, his voice cracking slightly. "Can I please come in?" I looked back at Maya, who was sitting on the couch with Buster. She gave me a firm nod. "Come in, Dad." He walked into our living room, awkwardly taking off his jacket. He sat down in the armchair. Buster immediately trotted over and rested his wet chin on my dad's knee. Normally, my dad would shoo a dog away, but he just absent-mindedly stroked Buster's ears. He looked up at me, and then at Maya, and his eyes were completely bloodshot. "I am so sorry," he said. The words sounded like they physically hurt him to push out. "I am so deeply, incredibly sorry." He looked directly at Maya. "Maya, you have been nothing but wonderful to my son. You are kind, you are smart, and you make him happier than I have ever seen him. We treated you like garbage. What my wife planned to do at your wedding was despicable. And the fact that I stood by and agreed to participate makes me a coward. I don't expect you to forgive me, but I need you to know that I am ashamed of myself." Maya's eyes welled up with tears, but she held her ground. "Thank you for saying that," she whispered. Then my dad turned to me. "Liam, I failed you. I spent your whole life catering to your brothers because they were loud and demanding, and you were so self-sufficient I just assumed you didn't need me. I let your mother run roughshod over you because I was too tired to fight her. When she pitched that insane objection plan, I knew it was wrong. I knew it would destroy you, but I went along with it anyway because it was easier than dealing with her wrath. I traded your happiness for my own comfort, and it cost me my son." He put his face in his hands and started to sob. My stoic, emotionally repressed Texan father was crying in my living room. I didn't immediately forgive him, but I thanked him for his honesty. We talked for 3 hours that night. He told me that the house had become a nightmare. My mother was doubling down on her delusion, refusing to admit any wrongdoing, and it was tearing their marriage apart. He also told me about Derek. Apparently, Derek's wife had caught wind of the full story from Chloe. She cornered Derek, threatened to pack her bags, and told him that if he ever pulled a stunt like that, she'd divorce him before the ink was dry. Derek was terrified. Sure enough, Derek called me a week later. His apology was gruff, awkward, and heavily motivated by fear of his wife, but he admitted he was a jerk and promised to back off. Connor, typical Connor, sent us a $300 espresso machine with a note that said, "Sorry things got weird. Love you, bro." It was a weak apology, but it was exactly what I expected from him. My mother, however, remains a stone wall. It's been 8 months since the wedding, and she hasn't reached out once. According to my dad, she still firmly believes she is the victim of a cruel, manipulative son and his wicked wife. She would rather sit alone in her giant, quiet house with her pride than admit she was wrong and have her family back. And the craziest part? I'm okay with that. For 28 years, I twisted myself into knots trying to earn the love and approval of a woman who was fundamentally incapable of giving it to me unless I was playing by her rigid, toxic script. Moving my wedding was the most terrifying thing I've ever done, but it broke the spell forever. I don't need her approval anymore. I have a wife who looks at me like I hung the moon. I have a dad who comes over every Sunday morning to drink coffee and throw tennis balls for my dogs. I have a life that is entirely, completely mine. Sometimes, the best way to win a rigged game is to just flip the board and walk away. And if they want to scream about it, let them scream to an empty room. On my wedding day, I exposed my fiancé and stepmother's affair, causing my father to collapse from shock. It's an unimaginable situation, and even now I can hardly believe this is my reality. Writing this down feels like the only way to process what happened. My mother passed away when I was 16, leaving my father utterly heartbroken. For 2 years, he devoted himself entirely to raising me and my younger sister Claire. Then he met Amanda, who became his wife and our stepmother. At first, I was resistant to her presence. I felt no one could ever replace my mom. But Amanda never tried to take her place. Instead, she positioned herself as a friend, someone supportive and understanding. Over time, she earned my trust. She helped me pick out prom dresses, gave me advice about college, and was always there when I needed someone to talk to about relationships. Eventually, I considered her family. 4 years ago, I met Henry at work. He seemed perfect, successful, charming, and the type of person who could light up a room. What really stood out was how effortlessly he fit into my family. He bonded with my dad over golf, chatted with Claire about her favorite reality shows, and formed a connection with Amanda through their shared love of yoga and meditation. After 2 years of dating, Henry proposed during a family trip. It felt like a dream come true. Amanda was deeply involved in the wedding preparations, helping with everything from choosing the venue to attending my dress fittings. I thought I was incredibly lucky to have such a supportive stepmother. 2 days before the wedding, everything unraveled. My cousin Ben, one of Henry's groomsmen, asked to speak to me privately. He looked pale, almost sick, as he showed me a video he had recorded during Henry's bachelor party. In the video, Henry, visibly drunk, bragged about his affair with Amanda. He described how it started at last year's Christmas party and revealed in excruciating detail how they would meet at hotels while pretending she was attending yoga classes. What broke me was his admission that proposing to me was just a ploy to keep their affair hidden. Shocked and devastated, I didn't know what to do. But Ben encouraged me to dig deeper, so we did. We recovered deleted text messages between Henry and Amanda, uncovering hundreds of exchanges where they planned their meetings. Amanda's credit card bills showed frequent charges at hotels on days she was supposedly at yoga. I even went to the hotels they used the most. One manager recognized them and allowed me to view security footage of them checking in together multiple times. The evidence was overwhelming. It was like a nightmare. While I had been working extra hours to save for our wedding, my fiancé was betraying me with my stepmother. At first, I considered canceling the wedding quietly. But the more I thought about it, the more I realized that wouldn't be enough. Canceling without explanation would leave room for whispered rumors and twisted narratives, likely painting me as the irrational one. No, they needed to be exposed for who they truly were. On the day of the wedding, instead of walking down the aisle in my expensive white dress, I arrived wearing jeans and an old t-shirt. Guests were confused, whispering amongst themselves. Amanda rushed over, trying to escort me to the bridal suite, insisting we could fix whatever was wrong. Henry looked nervous but tried to act calm and collected. I took my place at the altar. When it came time for the vows, I signaled to the AV technician we had hired to handle the video screens. Instead of our carefully curated wedding video, the footage from Henry's bachelor party began playing. Every shocking, vile detail echoed through the speakers. Then came the security footage from hotels and their text message exchanges, displayed for all 200 guests to see. The room erupted into chaos. Amanda tried to escape, but my uncles blocked the exits. Henry stood frozen, stammering that he had been drunk and joking in the video. My father, overwhelmed by the betrayal, collapsed and had to be rushed to the hospital. Afterward, some guests criticized me, saying I went too far and should have handled the situation privately. But after enduring over a year of lies and humiliation, I felt they deserved every second of public exposure. If they had wanted privacy, they should have thought of that before betraying me and my family so thoroughly. Now, my father remains in the hospital under observation. The stress of everything has taken a toll on his health. Amanda hasn't returned home since that day, and Henry continues to call and text me, begging for a chance to explain himself. I've blocked his number on every platform, but he finds new ways to try to reach me. Claire, my sister, is staying with me because she doesn't want to be alone in the house, surrounded by the memories of what Amanda and Henry did. As I try to piece my life back together, I'm left grappling with the realization that every happy memory from the past few years, family dinners, vacations, holidays, feels tainted. Were those moments of laughter and connection genuine, or were they just opportunities for Amanda and Henry to sneak around behind my back? The betrayal cuts deeper than I ever imagined. For now, I'm focusing on supporting my father and Claire as we navigate this storm together. I don't know what the future holds, but one thing is certain. At least the truth is out. They can no longer hide behind the facade of family unity and love. It's a small comfort, but it's a step toward healing. Update 1. It's been 2 weeks since I exposed Henry and Amanda during my faux wedding, and things have only gotten worse. I assumed that playing the video would be the end of it, that they would flee in humiliation and I would be able to start rebuilding my life. Instead, it feels as if I've opened Pandora's box. Amanda has emerged, not to apologize or express regret, but to try to dominate the story. She wrote a dramatic email to our entire extended family, friends, and even some of my workplace. She portrayed herself as an innocent victim, duped by Henry. She said my father was constantly working, which he wasn't, and that she was lonely and vulnerable, which she also wasn't. According to her, Henry chased her constantly until she caved in. In her email, she mentioned that she felt stuck and couldn't tell anyone since she didn't want to break up our family. She even had the arrogance to imply that she only helped arrange the wedding because she was looking for an excuse to break up with Henry. The entire email was filled with lies and phony apologies about how she never intended to upset me. Then my cousin, who had taped the bachelor party video, decided to probe deeper. He works in IT and understands how to recover deleted emails. He discovered years of correspondence between Amanda and Henry, going back to when I was still in college, long before Henry and I met. They actually knew each other from the yoga studio where Henry used to work as an instructor. Amanda was one of his frequent students. During my final year of college, when I was stressed out, Amanda became insistent that I try yoga. She expressly recommended this studio and often praised their professors, particularly Henry. She made sure I only attended courses when Henry was instructing, claiming they were the greatest for beginners. Looking back, I recall her asking extensive questions about the classes, whether I thought Henry was a competent teacher, and even if I found him appealing. She was literally orchestrating the entire romance. The worst revelation came when my father checked on our family beach property. He discovered a wooden box concealed in the back of their wardrobe, filled with love letters between Henry and Amanda. These letters were not simply recent. They dated back years. They laid forth their plan for Henry to marry me so they could continue their connection without suspicion. They even joked that I would never notice because I was too preoccupied with my work. The wedding video has circulated throughout our neighborhood. People who weren't even at the wedding witnessed it. Henry's groomsmen began providing additional information about what he said at the bachelor party that were not captured on tape. Apparently, he made several vulgar remarks about having a mother and a daughter. Then additional women started coming forward with stories about Amanda. Two of Claire's high school friends contacted me independently. They both said Amanda attempted to seduce their elder brothers when they came over to study. One of the brothers was 19 at the time. Another member of our church confessed that Amanda had an affair with her husband 3 years ago. My stepmother appears to have a history of chasing younger men, particularly those connected to her daughters. My father was released from the hospital after 3 days, but he isn't the same person. His blood pressure remains elevated, and he rarely eats or sleeps. He spends the majority of his time in his study, looking through old photographs and family recordings. I visit him every day, but seeing him in such a way breaks my heart. He constantly apologizes to me, claiming that he should have spotted the indications. Henry finally stopped contacting me personally when I threatened him with a restraining order, but he has since propagated his own version of events. He claims I'm unstable and overreacted to innocent drunken conversation at his bachelor party. His family fully supports his lies. His mother even contacted me, saying I had ruined her son's life due to a misunderstanding. She argued that the hotel visits and messages could be explained if I only let Henry speak to me. I blocked her phone number. The ultimate blow came when Claire discovered Amanda's diary in a false bottom drawer in her craft room. What she described about her relationship with Henry made me physically ill. She described their encounters, future plans, and how they giggled about their secret at family gatherings. She even told her lover how much fun it was to help organize my wedding, selecting sites where they had already hooked up. Reading those diary notes destroyed something inside me. All the times I thanked her for her assistance with the wedding and confided in her about my connection with Henry, she was laughing behind my back. How did I miss what was going right in front of me? Update 2. It has been a month since my last report, and the situation has deteriorated in ways I never expected. Just when I thought things couldn't get any worse, something new emerges. The most significant development is that Henry lost his position at the investment firm. It comes out that his boss's wife attended the wedding and videotaped everything on her phone. The video spread across the office and eventually reached the company's board. They judged that Henry's actions reflected poor judgment and a lack of moral character. Because he dealt with high net worth clientele who trusted him with their money, the company concluded it couldn't take the risk of keeping him. Henry was dismissed last week without severance pay, but that's not the worst part. Amanda totally lost it. While my father was still suffering from everything, she emptied their joint accounts, taking nearly $200,000. She also grabbed all of the family jewels, including pieces that belonged to my mother and were intended to be passed down to me and Claire. My mother's engagement ring, her grandmother's pearls, and even the locket containing our infant pictures are all gone. Amanda left a dramatic statement, stating that years of mental manipulation and anguish pushed her to take drastic steps to protect herself. My father's lawyer is trying to find her, but she appears to have vanished. She even emptied her personal storage unit without anyone noticing. Claire eventually broke down and said something that made my blood boil. Last year, after her senior prom, she discovered Amanda attempting to seduce her boyfriend Tom. Claire had gone upstairs to change out of her outfit, while Tom waited in the kitchen. When she returned, she discovered Amanda cornered Tom against the fridge while wearing nothing but a silk robe. Tom appeared afraid. Amanda attempted to explain it as a misunderstanding, claiming she didn't expect anyone to be in the kitchen so late. She begged Claire not to tell anyone, fearing it would split the family. Claire, barely 18 at the time and terrified, remained silent. She broke up with Tom the next day, too embarrassed to tell him the true reason. More details concerning Henry and Amanda's affair emerge. Amanda's yoga friend contacted me, claiming Amanda and Henry's relationship at the yoga class was an open secret. Everyone assumed it was over when Henry moved to work in finance, but it appears they just became better at hiding it. The friend discovered old images from a yoga retreat of Henry and Amanda looking quite cozy, shot while Henry and I were already dating. Amanda's yoga acquaintance also noted that she had a reputation for getting too close to male pupils, particularly younger ones. The studio owner had admonished her several times to respect professional boundaries. This validates Claire's friend's claims about Amanda chasing their brothers. My father has started divorce proceedings, but he is not doing well. His blood pressure is alarmingly high, and his doctor has prescribed additional medication. He rarely leaves the house, save for sessions with his lawyer. Every fresh revelation concerning Amanda's dishonesty appears to age him an additional year. What hurts the most is that Amanda's betrayal extended far beyond the affair. She actively sought to get close to vulnerable younger males in her family. She preyed on Claire's boyfriend while he was barely out of high school, manipulating events to get her way while seeming to be a loving stepmother. I keep discovering concealed receipts from places I never knew existed, a burner phone in her garden shed, and gift cards and notes from Henry hidden in her old books. It's as if she had a secret existence that ran parallel to ours. Some of Henry's buddies have reached out to apologize. They admitted knowing about the affair but were too afraid to say anything. One of them said that Henry would boast about how easy it was to deceive me because I worked so hard. He preferred my lengthy hours since they allowed him more time with Amanda. The entire situation makes me feel unclean, as if every memory from the last 5 years, family dinners, holidays, vacations, is soiled. Were those just ways for them to sneak around behind my back? How many times did they laugh at me while professing to care about my well-being? Update 3. 6 months later, the fallout still. Amanda reappeared in Arizona, living with a 35-year-old yoga instructor she met on a retreat. She originally attempted to challenge the divorce, saying that she deserved half of everything because my father's work schedule drove her to infidelity. Her lawyer dropped the case after my father's legal team produced evidence of her numerous indiscretions and money theft. Amanda received nothing in the settlement other than her own items, including the jewels and money she had stolen. We found some of my mother's jewels in pawn shops. The proprietors were sympathetic to our story and let us buy back a few pieces at cost, but my mother's engagement ring and most of the family antiques are still gone. Amanda alleges she sold them for cash and squandered everything. Henry's life has gone apart. After losing his work, he was unable to pay for his apartment and returned to live with his parents. His attempts to find work at other investing businesses were unsuccessful, as no one wanted to hire him after what transpired. A video of his bachelor party confession went viral on LinkedIn, and it now displays when people search for his name. Amanda left him for her yoga instructor when he lost his job and money. He recently showed up intoxicated at Claire's college graduation celebration, weeping about how he gave up his life for Amanda. When he attempted to force his way into the room to speak with me, security had to forcibly remove him. Even his parents have stopped defending him and are advising him to relocate out of state for a new start. The wedding venue contacted us to refund our entire money. They even wanted to utilize our story anonymously as a cautionary tale in their new contracts, which now include provisions barring unauthorized video displays during ceremonies. My father is doing better physically. His blood pressure is under control, and he is gradually reconstructing his life. He sold the beach house, unable to endure the memory of their affair, and relocated to a smaller home closer to me and Claire. He's also unearthed writings that show how thoroughly Amanda exploited us over the years. She documented instances in which she gaslighted him, such as shifting his keys and pretending he was forgetful or lying about agreements they never made. She did the same thing to me and Claire, quietly diminishing our confidence while trying to be helpful. Claire is succeeding at college, dating again, and feels lighter since she no longer needs to worry about Amanda preying on her boyfriends. She's even reconnected with her previous boyfriend Tom, as friends, which has helped her heal from the trauma. As for me, I am not interested in dating right now. My pals continue to try to set me up, but I need time to trust again. The most difficult thing is not the betrayal directly, but recognizing that every good family memory from the last few years, family dinners, holidays, even tiny moments like watching TV together, was based on lies. I've moved to a new apartment in a different part of town, changed my phone number, and blocked Henry and Amanda across all platforms. Some people still believe I went too far with the public exposure, but I do not regret it. Sometimes the truth requires witnesses, and sometimes the only way to deal with toxic people is to shed light on their actions. To anyone experiencing a similar betrayal, believe your instincts. If something feels off, it probably is. I spent years disregarding red signs because I wanted to believe in the ideal family life. Never again. My husband and mother-in-law treated me like a servant, mocking my efforts, demanding obedience, and making me feel invisible. Alex's words cut through the clatter of dishes like a keen scalpel. "Alara, bring me some tea now." I halted, my hands dipped in soapy water. "Hold on, I'm doing the dishes." "What?" His tone was incredulous and impatient. "Stop that and then bring me the tea right away. Can't you obey simple commands?" "But," I began, only to be interrupted. "What a useless wife you are." "Make me some sweet coffee," said another voice. Mrs. Whitmore, my mother-in-law, spoke from the living room. She sat there munching a slice of cake she had grabbed from the fridge, her eyes gleaming with malice. I sighed and looked at the stack of dishes. "There are so many. Leave them for later." "Just do what we say, useless wife," Alex's voice hissed, each syllable hurting. I was Alara, a 28-year-old working mother whose life felt more like a jail than a home. Married at 23, I had hoped for love and friendship, but instead found myself in the hands of Alex and his domineering mother. Our 4-year-old son was the only bright spot in an otherwise dark existence. We lived in Alex's parents' house, a decision foisted on me under the premise of caring for Mrs. Whitmore after my father-in-law died. Initially, I sympathized with her alleged anguish, but it quickly became evident that I was nothing more than a part in her cruel game of home oppression. Cooking, cleaning, and working just weren't enough. My attempts were treated with derision, and my meals were either left untouched or sharply ridiculed. "The stir-fry is so half-hearted," Mrs. Whitmore would remark. "Cook it properly from scratch." "I'm busy and can only do simple things," I'd say, trying to maintain a calm voice. "That's why I hate backtalk from my daughter-in-law," she quipped. "Cook from scratch? Why don't you cook? You are a good cook, correct?" I risked to react once and soon regretted it. "Why would I do housekeeping with you here?" She responded coldly and dismissively. "Are you out of your mind?" Their brutality grew with time, progressing from harsh words to a chilling quiet. They began to entirely disregard me, as if I were a ghost in my own home. My presence, which was previously underestimated, now appeared completely invisible. 5 years passed in this suffocating environment. Alex and I turned 35 and 33 respectively. Our son developed, but the unpleasant atmosphere in the house remained constant. My mother-in-law, now 63, appeared to thrive on my suffering. One evening, as I trudged home from work, a heavy revelation hit me. They saw my existence as meaningless. I was a shadow, unnoticed and unheard. The only voice that acknowledged me was my son's. The idea of losing even that minor recognition was agonizing. When I returned home, I started cooking right away, hoping to lift my spirits. I made mapo tofu, fried chicken, and a stir-fry with bell peppers and pork, attempting to bring some regularity to our dinner. "Bring me the mayo," Alex said unexpectedly, breaking his long silence. "Sure, here you are," I said, handing him the mayonnaise. His first words to me in ages were not thanks or discussion, but rather a command. It was the last straw, the limit of my patience and tolerance. Mrs. Whitmore demanded, "Clean the toilet." "What? Now?" I was shocked. "Yes, now," she demanded, her voice full of hate. I snapped back, unable to suppress my annoyance. "Don't say such a thing while we're eating. It's nasty, just like your heart," she said. Our dispute immediately escalated, with Alex interjecting and demanding that I apologize to his mother. But I refused, standing firm for the first time in years. The conflict reached its climax, and a conclusion formed within me. I needed to get out of this toxic environment, not just for myself, but also for my baby. I returned to my room, my determination stiffening. I downloaded divorce papers, completed them, and slapped them in front of Alex. His amazement was evident, but I felt just icy determination. "I'm filing these," I announced, my voice firm. As I stood there, looking at my husband's puzzled expression, I realized I had finally stepped out of the shadows. It was time to regain my life. The days after I declared my divorce were a blur of frigid stares and stinging remarks, but in the midst of the chaos, I discovered an unexpected sense of freedom. Mrs. Whitmore looked at the food I was serving one evening with distaste. "You call this food? Even a child cooks better." I bit my tongue, concentrating on my son's happy expression. "Eat up, sweetheart. I made your favorite tonight." Alex added in, his voice full of sarcasm. "Oh, playing the perfect mother now, are we? What a joke." I could feel my rage rising, but I held my cool. "I'm just trying to make a nice dinner for our son." Mrs. Whitmore snorted. "Don't act high and mighty. You're just a burden in this house." The tension around the table was apparent. Alex's attempts to insult me grew more intense. "So, Alara, have you thought about how you'll survive after the divorce? You can barely keep a house, let alone your own life." I stared him directly in the eyes. "I have been supporting this family for years. I'm not worried about taking care of myself and our son." His smirk faded somewhat, and a spark of concern appeared on his face. Mrs. Whitmore was quick to intercede. "Don't be absurd. You need us more than we need you." The talk drifted to finances, which they typically avoided. "You do realize that without my salary, this household would crumble," I said to myself rather than to them. Mrs. Whitmore sneered. "We'd manage. We don't need your pity money." But Alex's silence spoke volumes. He understood the truth. They would be in serious financial trouble if I did not provide a living. Their behavior deteriorated during the next few days. Mrs. Whitmore alternated between trying to sweet-talk me into staying and shouting insults when I refused. Alex, on the other hand, appeared confused, his arrogance eroding as the reality of his financial dependency became clear. One afternoon, I overheard a talk between them that chilled me to the core. "She can't just leave us like this," Alex growled. "We need her money." Mrs. Whitmore's response was chilly and calculating. "Do not worry. I have a plan. We'll make her life so unpleasant that she won't want to leave." Hearing their genuine objectives exposed was a revelation. They did not care about me or our son. It was all about power and wealth. That night, as I lay in bed, an idea began to emerge in my head. If they wanted a fight, I'd give them one. But it would not be fought with words or trivial disputes. I'd strike them where it hurts the most, their pride and their pocketbook. The following morning, I began putting my plan into action. I contacted a lawyer, a bright, no-nonsense woman who was highly recommended. "I want a divorce, and I want to make sure they don't get a penny more than they deserve," I informed the woman. She nodded, her eyes bright with determination. "We'll make sure of it. You've been the only breadwinner, correct? We'll make use of that." My resolve got stronger with each passing day. I began documenting everything: insults, financial manipulation, and even little grievances. It was time to turn the tables. It was time to accept the repercussions of their deeds. As I prepared my case, I felt a sense of empowerment. For the first time in years, I felt like I had power over my own fate. The shades of scorn were slowly lifting, revealing a new dawn. As the divorce proceedings began, the mood in the house became more caustic. Yet, with each passing day, my panic faded, replaced by a steely resolve. Mrs. Whitmore decided to try a new strategy one evening. "Alara, dear, why don't we forget all this nasty business? You know we're family." Her comments were insincere. I met her stare unwaveringly. "Family doesn't treat each other the way you've treated me." Alex, who had been silently watching, scoffed. "Oh, playing the victim now? You're not as innocent as you pretend to be." I felt a wave of rage, but I kept my voice composed. "I'm not playing anything, Alex. I'm just no longer willing to be your scapegoat." As is typically the case, the subject turned to finances. "You think you can just take our son and leave? How will you support him?" Alex was skeptical. I grinned with a tiny, confident curl of my lips. "I've been supporting this family for years. I think I can manage." Mrs. Whitmore turned her gaze into a sneer. "You're nothing without us. You'll come crawling back." But their remarks no longer had force over me. I recognized my worth and knew the truth. The following day, I met with my lawyer again. She outlined the strategy clearly. "We'll expose their financial dependency on you. It will play a crucial role in the custody battle and the division of assets." I nodded, feeling vindicated. The law was on my side, and I was prepared to fight back. At home, the tension had reached a boiling point. Mrs. Whitmore's attempts to discredit me got increasingly desperate. "You think you're so smart," she sneered one evening. "But you're just a cold-hearted woman abandoning your family." I stared her directly in the eyes. I'm a woman who's finally standing up for herself." Alex leaped in, his voice full of fury. "You'll regret this? You can't survive without me." However, his threats fell on deaf ears. I was done being intimidated. As the days passed, my preparations for the court battle became more intense. I obtained financial accounts, documented their harsh remarks, and gathered evidence of their negligence. One afternoon, as I was arranging my documents, my kid approached me. "Mom, are we going to be okay?" His voice was soft and hesitant. I drew him into an embrace, feeling a flash of protectiveness. "Yes, sweetheart. We're going to be just fine. We're leaving this place, and we're going to start a new, happy life, just you and me." His arms tightened around me, and I knew I'd made the correct decision. I was fighting not just for myself, but also for my son's future. The court hearing date approached, bringing with it the prospect of impending freedom. I was prepared to confront Alex and Mrs. Whitmore and put an end to their tyranny and emotional abuse. I was ready to take back my life and give my son the peace and happiness he deserved. It was time for justice, and I was determined to see it delivered. The court hearing day arrived, and I was filled with both dread and determination. I felt a sense of surrealism when I sat across from Alex and Mrs. Whitmore in court. This was the moment when everything changed. The proceedings started with frigid formality. Alex's lawyer portrayed him as a dedicated spouse and parent battling under unjust accusations. Mrs. Whitmore played the sorrowful mother-in-law who had been wronged by her ungrateful daughter-in-law. However, their performance was apparent, and their lies were flimsy. When my turn came, I spoke clearly and steadily. "I've been the only provider for this family for years. My husband's unemployment and his mother's manipulative behavior have been continual sources of stress." Alex intervened, his voice tinged with feigned hurt. "Alara, how can you say such things? I've always backed you." I turned to him, my stare steadfast. "Alex, support is more than words. It's about deeds, and your actions have only demonstrated selfishness and harshness." The judge listened closely as I presented my evidence, which included financial accounts, audio recordings of their verbal abuse, and testimony from neighbors who witnessed their behavior. The fact was undeniable. As the evidence accumulated, Alex's facade began to collapse. Mrs. Whitmore's poise shattered, and her innocence slipped away. The courtroom was quiet, the air thick with anxiety. Then came the realization that sealed their doom. My lawyer submitted photos and documentation confirming Alex's adultery and Mrs. Whitmore's clandestine affair with Mr. Harwood, a wealthy neighbor. Murmurs broke out in the courtroom as the photographs of them in compromising postures were shown. Their lie was exposed for all to see. Alex's face became ashen, his eyes wide with surprise. Mrs. Whitmore's face twisted into rage, and her hands trembled. You compromised our privacy," she yelled, her voice shrill. I glanced at her, my voice steady yet forceful. I revealed the truth, which you both had been hiding for far too long." The court shouted for order, but the harm was already done. Their credibility was shattered, and their lies were revealed in the bright light of the courtroom. As the session concluded, the judge's conclusion was apparent. I was given full custody of our son, and a fair distribution of assets was ordered. Alex and Mrs. Whitmore were left with just their destroyed reputations. Walking out of the courtroom, I felt a weight lifted from my shoulders. The years of deception and emotional assault had finally ended. I had confronted my oppressors and emerged victorious. But the finest moment was when my son raced into my arms outside the courthouse, his face beaming with relief and joy. "We did it, Mom," he exclaimed, his voice full of delight. "Yes, we did," I said, holding him close. "We're free now. This is only the beginning for us." As we walked away hand in hand, I realized this was more than simply a personal win. It was a victory for everybody who has ever been made to feel little, helpless, or unworthy. It represented a victory for truth and justice. It was the beginning of a new chapter, one full of optimism and the promise of a better future. The court verdict had an immediate and chaotic impact. The story of Alex and Mrs. Whitmore's deception spread like wildfire, ruining their reputations in our little neighborhood. They could no longer hide behind their facade of respectability. In the days following the verdict, I concentrated on rebuilding my life with my kid, but I couldn't deny the gratification of knowing Alex and Mrs. Whitmore were facing the repercussions of their decisions. One evening, as I was making dinner, I had an unexpected visitor. Mrs. Harwood, Mr. Harwood's wife, appeared, her eyes crimson from unshed tears. "Alara, I've heard about everything. "I can't believe what Sylvia, Mrs. Whitmore, did," she exclaimed, her voice breaking. I invited her in and offered a cup of tea. As we sat at the kitchen table, she expressed her sadness. I trusted her as a neighbor and friend. And to think she was having an affair with my husband. Her voice trembled, so I listened and offered words of comfort. Mrs. Whitmore's actions had clearly caused far more damage than she had planned. The next day, I saw Alex in town. He was a shell of his former self, his arrogance replaced with a defeated expression. "Alara, please. Can we speak?" he asked, his voice barely above a whisper. I paused, facing him. "What's there to talk about, Alex?" He fidgeted, unwilling to meet my gaze. I apologize for everything. I didn't understand how much I relied on you and your strength." His apologies, however late, reflected the shift in power. He had lost everything, his dignity, his home, and his family, and in that loss, he had finally admitted his own flaws. Mrs. Whitmore, however, received the greatest criticism. Her affair with Mr. Harwood had not only wrecked her reputation but also resulted in legal problems. Mrs. Harwood sought a divorce and sued her for alienation of affection. I learned of Mrs. Whitmore's dilemma from neighbors. Whispers and tales depicted a lady undone by her own acts. She had become an outsider, rejected by individuals she had previously considered friends. I saw her at the grocery store one day, hurrying through the aisles with downcast eyes. Our paths touched, and for a brief moment, our eyes met. The sight of hatred and defeat in her eyes was undeniable. "You did this to me," she said under her breath as she walked by. I watched Sylvia leave, her figure slowly fading as she hurried away, her eyes filled with resentment. I felt a strange mix of pity for her and vindication for myself. "No, Sylvia," I whispered under my breath. "You did this to yourself." The tides of justice had finally shifted. Everything they had done to me, all the lies, the manipulation, the emotional torment, had come full circle. The consequences of their actions were now irreversible. I could see them struggling, living in the aftermath of the deceit they had carefully cultivated over the years. Their false facade had shattered, and now they were forced to face the reality of what they had become. As I watched them suffer through the consequences of their own making, I felt a sense of calm satisfaction. But it wasn't just about them getting what they deserved. The real reward was in the freedom I had gained. The best form of retribution, I realized, was not in revenge, but in living a life full of peace and strength, free from the toxicity and harmful influence they had cast upon me for so long. My focus shifted back to what truly mattered, the future I was building with my son. We were free now, free from the prison they had trapped me in for all those years. I had broken free, and now, I was living the life I had always dreamed of. This wasn't just a story of revenge or victory, it was a story of liberation. It was a powerful testament to my strength and resilience. I had taken control of my destiny, broken the chains of abuse, and freed myself from the tyranny of their manipulation. As I looked ahead, I knew that the future was bright, and the best was yet to come. I was no longer a prisoner to their cruelty. I was free, and the world was mine to conquer. I discovered my family only valued my money, not me. I cut them off, reclaimed my life, and found freedom in choosing myself over their manipulation. My name is Emma, and until a few nights ago, I believed that my family loved me. It began with a simple notification. My aunt had given me a video. I was in the midst of preparing dinner when my phone rang. I wiped my hands on a towel, grabbed my phone, and unintentionally tapped the message. At first, I assumed she sent me something random, a family movie, or an old film she found amusing. But then I heard my mom's voice. "Emma should be grateful. She'd be nothing without us." My stomach sank. The video looked unsteady, as if someone had laid their phone down without realizing it was recording, but the voices were perfectly audible. "A pathetic failure, that's what Emma is," my father said with a laugh. "But at least she's good for something, paying our bills." Laughter? I held my phone more tightly. "If Emma ever stopped sending money," my aunt, who had just sent this, said with a smirk, "we'd just guilt her into it. She's too soft to say no." My entire body became numb. "Emma. This is my name." They weren't discussing a hypothetical person. They were not fooling around. They were talking about me. I had been assisting them for years, paying their rent, covering their debts, and spending my own funds to ensure they never struggled in the same manner I did. And is this what they truly thought of me? I was still stuck, my thumb hanging over the screen, when the video abruptly disappeared. "This message has been unsent." I gazed at the notification. My aunt realized her error. She must have panicked and deleted the video, assuming I hadn't noticed. I should have challenged her. Should have called her out. I should have told them I knew everything. But instead, I put down my phone and pretended I hadn't seen it. And that's when I determined I wouldn't react. Not yet. I had a plan. I sat for what seemed like hours, staring at my phone. The words echoed in my thoughts. Emma should be grateful. A pathetic failure. She's too soft to say no. I wanted to believe there was a misunderstanding. Perhaps they were joking. Perhaps I was missing some context. But deep inside I knew better. I knew the truth. They intended every word. And the worst part. They were not wrong about one thing: I was too soft to say no. How many times had they guilted me into assisting them? How many times have I put my own life on hold to ensure they got what they required? My father's temporary financial difficulties developed into me paying rent for years. My brother's tuition, he didn't even complete college. My mother's incessant emergencies, always neatly timed when I had just been paid. And I had done everything without hesitation. Because that's what families are meant to do, right? I had spent years convincing myself that I was doing the correct thing. They appreciated me. They said they loved me. But that one video shattered every fantasy I had left. And now they believed they had gotten away with it. My aunt had unsent the message, perhaps breathing a sigh of relief that I hadn't noticed it. Perhaps she even reassured everyone. Don't worry, Emma didn't watch it. They assumed I was still in the dark. That was my advantage. I could have texted her right there. Could have confronted her. I told her I had seen everything. But what would that accomplish? They'd simply deny it. Make excuses. Twist the circumstances so that I feel guilty. I'd let them assume I was still their dutiful little financial account, for the time being. The next payment was due in a few days. And this time, things would be different. The next morning, I awoke to my normal routine, but everything felt different. The sun still shone through my drapes. My coffee brewed just as it usually did. But there was this awareness in the back of my mind, as if I was observing my life from a new perspective. My phone vibrated. A message from my mother. Mom. Morning, sweetie, just checking in. I hope you're doing well. I stared at the message. It was usual, too normal. She never texted me simply to check in. There was always a cause, and a request was hidden somewhere. And just a few minutes later. Mom. Oh, by the way, the rent is due soon. Can you send it by Friday? There it was. The same cycle. The same motif. But this time, I was not going to play along. I typed a response with my fingertips hovering over the keyboard. My typical response would be something like of course, or no issue. Maybe I'd even apologize for taking so long, just so they didn't feel inconvenienced. Not this time. I deleted everything and simply responded, I can't this month. Before sending the message, I glanced at it for a few seconds. I set down my phone and waited. 1 minute. 2 minutes. Buzz. Mom. What do you mean, you can't? I could see the displeasure on the television. I'd never said no before. I didn't answer immediately. Instead, I took a sip of my coffee, leaving her to stew in her bewilderment. A couple more messages arrived. Mom. Emma, this is serious? We are counting on you. You know we don't have any other options right now. Another buzz. This time it's from my aunt. Aunt. Hello, honey. Your mother is freaking out. Is everything okay? I nearly laughed. Is everything okay? Sure. Everything was excellent. I had spent years paying for their life, and when I hinted at stopping, they panicked. They never asked me if I was all right, if I needed assistance. It never was about me. It had never been. I took a deep breath and responded. Me. I've had some unexpected bills this month. I cannot send anything. Sorry. That was it. There's no explanation, no apologies. And then I waited. What happened next revealed all I needed to know. The silence was terrible. For the first time in years, I had declined. They didn't know how to manage it. I stared at my phone, watching the 3 small dots appear and disappear. Over and over. My mom was typing. Stopping. Typing again. I envisioned her sitting there, fuming, trying to figure out the best way to persuade me to change my decision. Finally, her response got through. Mom. Emma, what do you mean by unexpected expenses? Is there anything more essential than your family? There it was. Guilt trip. They had always employed the same technique. I didn't respond. I simply let the message sit there. Less than 1 minute later. Mom. You know your brother doesn't have a way to pay his rent. If he's kicked out, that's on you. Ah. The brother card. Classic. Then another message. Mom. Emma, we raised you. We cared for you when you had nothing. Is this how you're repaying us? I gritted my jaw and tightened my fingers around my phone. When I had nothing? They never cared for me. I put myself through school. I worked 3 jobs to get out of that house. And as soon as I got money, they hung on to me like leeches, sucking me dry. They grabbed everything, so I had nothing. My phone vibrated again. Aunt. Emma, dear, do not do this. We are family. Your mother is merely upset. You know how she gets. Simply send the rent, and everything will be okay. Everything will be okay. Who is it fine for? I put down my phone, my heart hammering. I needed a second to breathe and ponder. I strolled to the kitchen, poured myself a glass of water, and took a slow sip while looking at the clock on the wall. I could feel something shifting within me. For years, I had been afraid of this moment. I was afraid that if I stopped paying, they would detest me. They would cut me off. They would turn their back on me. But now I know the truth. They've never loved me. They adored what I could offer them. And the moment that ceased, they would reveal who they were. Buzz. I strolled back to my phone and picked it up with firm hands. This time, the communication came from my father. Dad. Emma, I'm not sure what has gotten into you, but this is unacceptable. You are being selfish. This family needs you, and you're behaving like an entitled brat. Grow up and do the right thing. There it was. The final mask slips. No more faking kindness. No more pretending to care, just demands. I stared at the words, my heart racing in my ears. Then another notification came up. A voice message. From my aunt. My hands trembled as I paused, my thumb lingering above the play button. Something told me this would change everything. I hesitated for a long time, staring at the small play button on the screen. A voice message. From Aunt D. My heart beat against my ribcage. She was not the type to send voice messages. If she had something to say, she usually sugar-coated it in text, passive-aggressive with just enough phony sweetness to make me feel bad. But this was different. Slowly, I pressed play. Her voice came through, harsh and impatient. Aunt. Listen, Emma. I'm not sure what game you're playing, but this isn't humorous. Your mother is losing her sanity. Your father is upset. And honestly, I do not blame them. You have always been a little ungrateful. But this is quite selfish. I felt my gut clench, but I forced myself to continue listening. Aunt. You have a wonderful job, right? You earn more than any of us. You don't even need the money. Meanwhile, your family is struggling. So what? Did you just wake up one day and realize you don't care? A bitter laugh. You owe them, Emma. After all they've done for you. Following all the sacrifices they made. They gave you life. Now you're going to walk away? Pretend they do not exist. What kind of a daughter would do that? She breathed forcefully, and for a moment I believed she was finished. But then, Aunt. You know what? Her tone altered, becoming colder now. If you truly want to be that kind of person, that's fine. But do not expect them to forgive you. Don't expect to come crawling back once you discover how much you rely on them. Because when you pass this line, there's no going back. The message terminated. Silence. I let the words sink, my thumb hovering over the replay button. My ears rang, and my hands were numb. I should have been afraid. I should have panicked. I should have been hurrying to make things right, to correct this, to apologize. But instead, I felt relaxed. More than that, I felt free. Because she'd just verified everything. They did not love me. They did not respect me. They did not even recognize me as a person. They regarded me as nothing more than a financial account. A moving, breathing ATM. And the instant I stopped distributing money, I was nothing. And if that was the case, perhaps it was time to become nothing to them. Buzz. Another communication from my mom. Mom. This is your last opportunity, Emma. Send the rent. I stared at the message for a very long time. Then, without hesitation, I blocked her. I blocked my father, I blocked my aunt. And suddenly, for the first time in years, I was free. Or so I thought. Because the next day, my brother arrived at my home. The knock at my door sent shivers down my spine. It was early. It's too early. The sun was barely peeking over the horizon at this early hour, when most people were still sleeping. For a second, I considered ignoring it. Perhaps it was a neighbor. Perhaps there was a parcel. Maybe it wasn't what I thought it was. Then, another knock. This time, it was louder. Become more insistent. I took a slow breath, braced myself and walked to the door. My fingers paused on the handle, and my heart pounded in my chest. And then I opened it. There he was. My brother. His face contorted between fury and desperation, and his clothes wrinkled as if he hadn't slept. God's eyes. Bloodshot. Wild. Are you serious, Emma? His voice was as cutting as a sword shoved against my skin. What the hell is wrong with you? I blinked and kept my expression neutral. Good morning to you too. He scoffed and ran his hand through his already untidy hair. Don't do that. Don't act like this isn't a big deal. You blocked everyone. Mom is freaking out. Dad's losing his mind. You're just... What? Cutting us off? Pretending we don't exist? I crossed my arms and leaned against the door frame. I don't know, Jason. Maybe I just got tired of being treated like a piggy bank. His jaw clenched. Oh my God. Not this again, not this again. I gave out a sour laugh. Jason, I've been paying your rent for years. I've covered your bills, your food, even your stupid gym membership. And the one time I say no? The one time I set a boundary? Mom calls me a selfish brat, Dad says I'm unacceptable, and you show up at my door like I committed a crime. His lips parted as if he were going to argue, but no words emerged. So I continued going. And don't even try to pretend you care about me. I cocked my head, my voice cold. I saw the video. His face turned pallid. For the first time, genuine dread flashed across his eyes. What video? I smiled, but it was not a pleasant one. You know exactly what video. Jason shifted on his feet, looked aside as his hands balled into fists. Look, it wasn't serious, okay? We were just joking. You're being dramatic. Joking? My voice was soft, yet as sharp as glass. You all sat around laughing, calling me a pathetic failure. Saying I should be grateful for the chance to pay your bills. Do you know what that feels like, Jason? To hear your own family talk about you like that? He breathed sharply and rubbed his face. Emma, come on. No. I cut him off. You come on. You want money? Get a job. You want someone to take care of you? Find someone else. Because I'm done. Silence. He just stood there and stared at me. And for a little moment, I saw something spark across his face. Something rough. However, it was gone just as suddenly. You don't mean that, he grumbled. I retained his stare. Yes, I do. Another lapse in stillness. Then his expression darkened. His mouth curled into something unpleasant. Fine, he snapped. You want to be a selfish bitch? Go ahead. But don't come crawling back when you realize you have no one left. With that, he turned to walk away. I stood there, watching him leave. My chest was tense, yet my back was straight, because he was incorrect. I did have someone leave. I had myself. But, as I closed the door, letting out a trembling breath, my phone vibrated. I looked at the screen, and the familiar name flashed. It was my mom. But I was not going to pick up. Not this time. I had been at her mercy for so long. Her demands, her guilt trips, the way she used my own sense of duty against me, manipulating me into giving up all I had in order to keep her from breaking apart. Not anymore. I went away with the phone facing down. The truth was, I was done. I'm done with being a continual source of money. I'm tired of being the safety net that kept my family afloat when they couldn't be bothered to forge their own path in life. I'm done with lies and manipulation. They never asked me how I was doing. Never considered the toll it had on me to continually take up the slack. I had been carrying their weight for years, my mother's, my father's, and my brother's. All of them acting as if I owed them something, as if my life was just one long, endless repayment for everything they had done for me. But nobody had ever asked what I needed. Nobody had ever cared for me. And now, I was taking control. But my decision was not unnoticed. The following morning, when I sat in my living room, the silence felt oppressive. The weight of my decision was beginning to sink in. But there were no regrets. No second guessing. I had made the correct decision. Then, my doorbell rang. I was not surprised. It was Jason. I could tell by the way he knocked, demanding and impatient. This was the last person I expected to show up. But it's not surprising at all. I slowly opened the door, keeping my expression neutral. Emma, he began, his usual arrogant tone gone, replaced by something almost pleading. You need to listen to me. I did not welcome him in. I stood at the doorway, arms crossed. I don't need to listen to anything you have to say, Jason. He blinked, taken aback. No, you don't understand. His tone softened, almost desperate. Mom's freaking out. Dad's calling me, asking what's going on. They don't know how to fix this? You've cut us all off. You can't just leave us hanging like this. I scoffed and leaned against the doorframe. Oh, I'm sorry, did you think I was just going to keep enabling you? Keep paying your rent, your bills, and pretending everything was fine? No, Jason, I'm done. I don't care how much you or mom or dad beg. I'm done playing the role of the family ATM. His eyes flared with rage. You're acting like we've never done anything for you. Like we're all just users, right? I did not flinch. Oh, believe me, I know exactly what I've been to you all. I've been a cash machine. A free ride. And I'm tired of it. Jason's face twisted. You can't just leave us hanging like this. You owe us, Emma. The words stung. But they did not shatter me. They only made me more determined. I owe you, I said, my voice firm. I've given you everything. I paid for your rent, your groceries, your bills, while you just sat there and watched me do it. And you want to talk about owing? His fists clenched at his side. You'll regret this. You'll regret cutting us off. I couldn't help laughing. No, Jason. You'll regret it. Because I'm not the one who needs you anymore. Without waiting for his reaction, I slammed the door in his face. It felt nice. But I sensed that the drama was far from ended. Later that night, my phone vibrated again. I almost did not want to check it, but curiosity gnawed at me. It was from my father. Dad. Emma, we raised you. Do not assume you can simply walk away from everything we've done for you. You're making an enormous mistake. Come back. We'll chat about it. We will fix this. I could almost sense desperation in his words. I sat there for a time, phone still in hand. I could have ignored it. I may also have blocked him. But I had a better idea. I wasn't simply going to block them. I was going to make them pay for every single lie, every single time they took me for granted. And it was going to start now. I stood up, approached my desk, and opened my laptop. It was time to deliver a message they would never forget. So I started typing. I sat at my desk, staring at my laptop screen, my fingers hovering over the keyboard. I wasn't going to sit back and let them reintegrate into my life as if nothing had happened. I was done being the punching bag. This time, I was in control. I thought about everything I had done for them. All of the payments I'd made, the bailouts. I swallowed my pride and helped them, even though I knew I was the one being drained. No more. Now was their turn to feel the consequences of their conduct. I opened my email and began typing. First, I gathered all of the financial records. Every payment I'd ever made on their invoices. Each bank transfer. Every check I'd sent over the years to compensate for their faults. It was time to remind them of the things they had taken from me. I added a remark to the top of the email. Here's a detailed summary of everything I've done for you over the years. I'm done being your lifeline. I'll no longer be your ATM. And I'll no longer let you make me feel guilty for choosing myself. Consider this my final invoice. You don't owe me anything anymore, but you will owe yourself the realization of how much I've sacrificed, all because I thought family was supposed to help each other, not drain each other. Then I added the receipts, bills, and payments I'd sent. But it was not the end. Definitely not. I signed on to the family group chat, which used to keep me on edge with their complaints and demands. I browsed through the messages, reading the ones where they said they needed me and guilted me into assisting them. Then I tried something I hadn't done in years. I responded. You all talk a lot about what you've done for me, but you've forgotten how much I've given up for you. And here's the reality check. You never needed me. You just used me. I'm done. This is my last message. Don't ever contact me again. I sent it. The silence that followed was nearly lovely. I slumped back in my chair, feeling the weight of the decision wash over me. For once, there were no more phone calls. No more guilt trips. No more pretending they had any authority over me. They might continue their manipulations, lies, and empty promises. I was free. But just when I thought it was finished, I got one last message. From Jason. You're making a mistake, Emma. You'll regret this. Family sticks together. I smiled to myself. I knew he was only attempting to get under my skin. But this time, it didn't work. Because I didn't need them. I had a life. My freedom. And it was enough. It wasn't the dramatic explosion I had envisioned. It wasn't a great clash. But in its own way, this was much better. I had assumed command without anyone seeing it coming. And the best part? They lost their control over me. As I turned off my phone for the night, a sensation of calm washed over me. I did not have to play their game. I didn't have to continue sacrificing myself for those who didn't value me. It wasn't the revenge I expected. It was quieter. Be more deliberate. And far more satisfying. Now I could finally breathe. And the best part, I could finally live for myself, and that, in the end, was the sweetest victory. Reflection. Wow, what a ride that was, right? It's incredible to think of how much Emma had to endure for so long. But in the end, she gained control of her life. I admire how she refused to let her family's conflict and guilt bring her down. Instead of a massive conflict, she simply cut them off quietly, but with force. Making a scene is not always the best way to exact revenge. It's about reclaiming your life and showing that you're no longer a doormat. But here's the thing, not everyone would have handled it that way. Some could argue that she should have pushed for the relationship. Maybe even give them a second opportunity. Others may believe she made the correct decision by removing them entirely. So what are your thoughts? Do you agree with Emma's decision? Was her silent vengeance satisfying, or overly harsh? Please share your ideas in the comments below. I would love to know what you think. My wife changed after a work trip, then I discovered her therapist was an old friend who convinced her to cheat and ruined our marriage. I noticed a difference in my wife, Carla, about 6 or 7 months ago. She had just returned from her company's annual trip, which was organized by her manager to assist their team reunite and build their bonds. Usually, she returned from these excursions energized, full of anecdotes about her coworkers and eager to share minor experiences that had amused or inspired her. This time, things were different. Her temperament has changed noticeably since the day she returned home. She didn't discuss much about the vacation, which surprised me. When I questioned whether anything had happened, she simply shook her head and dismissed my fears. At first, I attributed it to the usual post-trip fatigue. Maybe she was just exhausted from all the traveling, socializing, and team-building activities. But even after a few days, her behavior remained the same. In fact, things worsened. Carla became angry with me, starting disputes over little matters that would not have disturbed her in the past. Before, my wife and I rarely fought. Our relationship was always healthy. But suddenly, the accustomed calm gave way to strain. Every day, it was as if she was hunting for reasons to dispute, and these disagreements seemed to arise out of nowhere. A comment that would have made her chuckle suddenly resulted in a sigh, or, worse, a fight. I couldn't understand where this sudden fury and frustration was coming from. It was no longer just the disputes. My wife began to isolate herself in different ways. We had a weekly date ritual, which could be as simple as getting coffee or going for a lengthy walk in the park. These outings were meaningful to us because they provided us with a chance to reconnect, unwind, and focus on one another away from the distractions of work and daily life. But Carla began canceling our dates with increasingly dubious explanations. She would complain about being too tired or having too much work to catch up on, even on weekends. My concern grew as the cancellations increased. I miss spending time with my wife, our connection, and our laughter. Her mood swings become increasingly pronounced. She appeared fine one minute and then became moody and withdrawn, retreating within herself. Of course, my mind wandered. I began to worry that she was losing interest in me, or, worse, that she had fallen in love with someone else. I didn't want to think about it, but her behavior seemed so strange and out of character that I began to contemplate options I hadn't considered before. When I eventually approached Carla with my fears, she was emphatic, insisting that there was no one else but me. She even gaslighted me, claiming that I was overthinking things and that she simply needed time to straighten things out in her life. So I attempted to give Carla some space, believing that whatever she was going through would resolve itself with time. I figured if I didn't press her and just gave her space to breathe, she'd eventually come around and things would return to normal. But, sadly, it did not occur. In fact, the more room I gave her, the farther away she appeared to float. She started working longer hours and came home late, sometimes after I had gone to bed. In general, she would tell me stories about her day, hilarious anecdotes about her coworkers, or complain about the current office drama. Now there was only silence. After she returned home, she became increasingly evasive when I tried to question her, and her acts began to create concerns in my mind. With our relationship on unstable ground, I recommended to my wife that we seek marriage therapy. I hoped that with the help of a counselor, she would be able to open up to me and we could figure out what was causing our disconnect. To my astonishment, Carla declined, stating that she wanted to visit a therapist independently and that she needed to focus on herself before we could work on our relationship together. While it didn't meet my expectations, I agreed. Ultimately, I wanted her to feel supported in any manner she needed. Carla soon found a therapist and began meeting with them 3 times a week for 2-hour sessions. I didn't ask too many questions about it, assuming she'd found someone qualified to help her. All I wanted was for her to achieve the clarity and calm she was looking for, and for us to be able to reconnect. Carla appeared to be in a better mood following each session, lighter, as if a weight had been lifted. I hoped that this was a sign that things would get better between us, that this was the start of a new chapter in our relationship. Instead, things became stranger. Carla began spending more time away from home, frequently making plans without me. It began with a few evenings here and there, but it quickly spread to almost every weekend. She'd go without much of an explanation and not return until late at night. I don't mind if she goes out with her buddies. In fact, I've always pushed her to pursue a life outside of our marriage. But I expected her to give me a heads up. Her frequent and sudden absences, along with her failure to keep me informed, made me feel neglected in my own marriage. Meanwhile, Carla appeared unconcerned about the fact that I missed spending time with her, no clue of how much I craved our former intimacy. What troubled me even more was when I realized, almost unintentionally, that my wife wasn't only spending time with friends on her little adventures. Apparently, she was also hanging out with random strangers she met at bars. This was something she had never told me. I only discovered out after several of my friends expressed worry. They had seen her at bars, dancing with strange men, apparently intoxicated and acting in ways that were entirely out of character. They'd recognized her as my wife. It was humiliating to learn of my wife's behavior secondhand, knowing that others were watching her behaviors while I remained in the dark. I was absolutely confused, dealing with the embarrassment and uncertainty that her behavior had caused. When I finally built up the courage to bring it up, hoping for an open discussion about what was going on, she rejected my concerns. She waved them off, explaining that she was just having fun and that dancing and talking to strangers did not imply that she was doing anything inappropriate with them. She said it as if her activities in meeting these strangers were insignificant, as if I shouldn't be touched by this version of herself that I scarcely recognized. Then she stopped assisting around the house. Since we both started working, we've always divided household tasks evenly. I've always cooked and packed our lunches every day. Carla handled the dishes, loading and unloading the dishwasher, and was in charge of the washing, while I did all of the folding and grass mowing. This system of shared responsibility has always been effective for us. But Carla abruptly ceased holding up her half of the bargain. She began to moan about how she felt oppressed by having to perform housekeeping, claiming that none of her friends appeared to have to work both at their jobs and from home. We had always had a mutual understanding, an equal give and take that allowed us both to concentrate on our careers while keeping our home in order. Her sudden irritability seemed utterly out of character. When she voiced these objections, I attempted to comprehend her point of view, but I couldn't ignore the facts. I pointed out that if she was referring to her neighborhood acquaintances, most of them were stay-at-home spouses who spent their entire day running their homes. I said that if she was feeling burdened by both work and housework, we should consider her leaving her job to run the household full-time, and I would gladly take on the position of sole earner. However, if she did not want to leave her job, she needed to understand that we both had to share home responsibilities. After all, I had never complained about the housework I did, so why was she bringing it up? Carla insisted that she no longer wanted to do housekeeping, claiming that her obligations at work were already too taxing, and she didn't want to come home and work on top of that. She told me I needed to step up and take care of things around the house, at least until she felt more prepared. Since then, I've been performing all of the household responsibilities by myself, with no assistance. I take care of the cooking, cleaning, and laundry to ensure that everything works properly. I hoped that she would finally recognize and appreciate my efforts. But, sadly, my work has gone unnoticed. So, after all of my efforts, imagine my surprise when I realized that 2 months ago, my wife was going around the neighborhood spreading false allegations about me. I learned from some of my male neighbors, whose wives are acquainted with Carla. These friends, who have known me for a long time, sounded concerned about what my wife had said. Carla had apparently been characterizing me as a domineering or poisonous husband, stating that I never allowed her to live calmly. When some of these wives inquired as to what I was doing to make her feel this way, Carla claimed that over time, she had realized that I was too closed-minded and had prevented her from having any enjoyment. As a result, she began to feel unfulfilled in our marriage. This, she claimed, was why she began engaging with other men. To help her reconnect with pieces of herself that she felt had become too suppressed since marrying me. She also told her friends that she had begun fantasizing about exploring her femininity with other men. At first, I clearly did not trust them. This did not sound like Carla at all. Carla, I knew, was always discreet about our relationship and avoided discussing personal topics, particularly with our friends. Also, why would she lie about me like this? I'd never stopped her from doing anything. For months, she had been doing anything she wanted as I stood silently by. She suddenly blamed me for being toxic and repressing her. I chose to face her directly, telling her what my friends had revealed to me. I asked her whether it was true that she had been talking about me this way. I wanted to hear her side of the story and understand why she felt compelled to share those details with others. To my surprise, Carla did not dispute any of it. She quietly revealed that she had communicated her sentiments with those people, explaining that she was dissatisfied and unsure about our relationship, so she vented her anger to others. I asked her what she meant exactly. Carla began to open up about her therapy sessions, revealing how her therapist had helped her recognize what she lacked in her life: enthusiasm. She informed me, in an unnaturally detached tone, that she now found me uninteresting and predictable, and that our marriage lacked passion. These words stung, especially since I had always imagined she was happy with the life we had created together. I reminded her of all the times she had expressed happiness, and how we had worked together to maintain our relationship balanced and fulfilling over the years. Instead of understanding where I was coming from, she accused me of stifling her by clinging to old memories and situations that she believed were obsolete. She argued that, while she had grown and kept up with the changes, I had remained the same, which was why we were so disconnected. My thoughts began to spin, so I asked her bluntly, "What do you want from our marriage?" She hesitated, evidently nervous, before adding that she and her therapist believed that an open marriage could help us restore our marriage. I was taken aback. I told her up front that I did not believe in open weddings. Carla then claimed that even if I didn't believe in them, she did. She stated that talking up about our relationship would restore the excitement she felt was missing, allowing her to rediscover herself while remaining married to me. She also emphasized that, in an open marriage, if I wasn't comfortable sleeping with strangers, that was fine, but she wanted the opportunity to do so without guilt. Her suggestion sent me reeling. I could scarcely understand what she was saying. I never expected that our marriage would reach a stage where she would seek satisfaction elsewhere. How could meeting new people while still married improve our relationship? How could her therapist propose something like this? I assumed my wife was seeing a therapist to improve herself, but in actuality, this so-called therapist was merely encouraging her to explore these crazy beliefs. I informed Carla that if she wanted a divorce, she didn't have to lie about being excited or needing anything new in her life. I argued that if she was so dissatisfied with me, she should just be honest instead of making up excuses to justify an open marriage. I told her that it was better for us to part ways than to stay married while meeting up with strangers. This was not how I imagined a marriage to be, and I couldn't stand by it. But, to my astonishment, Carla fought back, insisting she enjoyed being married to me. She highlighted how much she respected me as a dependable and trustworthy partner, and how I offered a stable basis that she valued. Yet, in the same breath, she said the spark between us had vanished. She insisted that we stay married and simply have fun with other people. She suggested that this new venture could help us and keep our marriage interesting. I informed my wife that I needed time to think about it because this was not a decision I could take lightly. But as I spent the following few days pondering on our relationship, I realized that an open marriage was not for me. And more crucially, neither was the person Carla had become. She had changed so much over time that I could no longer recognize her or feel close to her. She dressed differently. Her outfits had suddenly become more exposing and provocative. She was always hooked to her phone and engaged in chats with others. It was as if she had adopted a whole different lifestyle, one that no longer allowed for the principles we formerly shared. She seldom spoke to me anymore and had completely disregarded her job in maintaining our home. She treated me as a roommate at best, not a partner. I slowly realized that I did not want this version of my wife. I didn't want a companion who needed to see other people to feel satisfied. I had spent months trying to be patient, supportive, and give her the space she required, but the Carla I had fallen in love with had vanished, replaced by someone who appeared to consider our relationship as a convenience rather than a commitment. And it stung. But I understood it might be time to let go of our marriage. I had done everything I could, but it was clearly insufficient. After 2 weeks of careful consideration, I got down with Carla and informed her that I wanted a divorce. I explained all of the reasons I had given above and persuaded her not to challenge my decision. Carla, on the other hand, became enraged almost immediately. She accused me of being overly sensitive and felt that requesting a divorce was an unreasonable response. She couldn't understand why I wouldn't just give in and embrace the new lifestyle she was offering. I remained calm, emphasizing that this was not what I wanted and that she couldn't compel me to accept it. Each point I made seemed to make her angrier. Carla suddenly turned on me, accusing me of refusing to work on our marriage, alleging that I was the root of the problem. I wasn't surprised by her decision. She had always enjoyed gaslighting me and blaming me for everything without taking any responsibility herself. I tried to reason with her, but she refused to give in. Realizing we were going nowhere, I asked her to go. Since this was my house, I felt right in telling her to gather her belongings and go now that we were finished. Carla raged at me, saying I had no right to ask her to leave, and even threatened to ruin my life if I followed through with the divorce. Her wrath simply confirmed my choice, so I held firm, quietly advising her not to escalate the issue any further. In the end, she had no choice but to comply, but only after throwing a tantrum. She threw stuff around the home and even scratched my car in a fit of wrath before departing. Fortunately, I documented everything, photographic evidence of the damage and recordings of her outbursts, knowing that I would probably need it later on. This was simply a sad, terrible end to what had once been a really important relationship. Carla has been texting me insults about my manhood and spreading tales around town, accusing me of unfairly kicking her out and calling me a coward for failing to fight for our marriage. Update 1. Thank you everyone for your warm words. I'm not a fool. I now recognize that my wife may have had an affair, or several affairs, outside of our marriage. This is probably why she had the nerve to propose an open marriage to me. Clearly, she only wanted the benefits of being married to someone as established as me while putting no effort into our relationship. Why did this happen? I have no idea. Perhaps she never truly loved me, or she fell out of love over time. It doesn't really matter anymore. Carla continues to leave voicemails blaming me for everything. I'm tired of her continual allegations. Update 2. It has been 2 weeks since my last update. Carla had been wanting to meet for the past week, messaging and calling regularly, so I finally agreed to meet with her today. Part of me hoped she'd come around, that she'd be willing to discuss openly and even accept responsibility for everything that had happened between us. But as soon as we sat down, Carla went into a new story. She indicated that her therapist thought I was departing our marriage just because things had become difficult. According to this so-called therapist, I was the one who failed to fulfill my promise by refusing to adhere to Carla's requests. Then, as if that wasn't enough, Carla said she was willing to accept me back if I agreed to certain terms. I was taken aback. Take me back? Remember when I asked her for a divorce? To entertain myself, I inquired about her condition. Carla requested that I commit to an open marriage and allow her to leave her job so she could enjoy a stress-free life without having to worry about work. Hearing this made me laugh out loud. Initially, I assumed she was joking. How could she possibly be doubling down on such ridiculous expectations after everything that had occurred? Did she really expect me to be open to any of this after how she had treated me? Her total lack of self-awareness was astonishing. I told her right away that I would never agree to such foolish demands, because I was done with our marriage. I then stated that I had previously consulted with a lawyer and was in the process of filing for divorce. Her face became white with horror. Her tone changed immediately, from angry to imploring. She inquired whether I was really leaving her. I nodded. There was nothing left for me in our marriage. I was ultimately tired of trying to make things work with someone who seemed removed from reality and unwilling to compromise. Then Carla burst into tears. I was surprised to see her cry. This was the last thing I had expected. I gently urged her to calm down and explain why she was reacting in this way. Was she truly saddened over my decision? She should have anticipated this all along, right? Watching her cry made me question whether there was something more going on. I begged her to be honest with me. Was there something more behind her unusual conduct during the last few months? Carla finally opened up and revealed the truth. She added that approximately a year ago, she reconnected with an old high school acquaintance named Elle during their reunion. Elle was a self-proclaimed relationship expert on social media. Carla stated that she and Elle began spending more and more time together, rekindling their connection through long conversations and regular meetups. She acknowledged that Elle had begun to exert a big effect in her life. Over time, Carla disclosed that it was Elle who first noticed that she was unhappy in our marriage and began probing her about me and our relationship. Carla admitted that as she told Elle more about me and our life together, he frequently criticized our marriage, portraying it as oppressive and limiting. Elle continually reminded Carla of how exciting and adventurous she was in high school, when she had numerous boyfriends, and how she had always expected Carla to be the same way. Elle, on the other hand, thought Carla had gotten uninteresting. This caused Carla to resent me. She essentially blamed me for her change in conduct. She felt as if she had lost herself in the marriage, and rather than accepting responsibility for her own actions, she transferred her dissatisfaction onto me. Over time, her animosity grew, and she began to emotionally remove herself, certain that I was the reason she wasn't living the life she desired for herself. Elle gradually convinced Carla that the only way she could return to her old self was to let go of her inhibitions, be more open around others, and simply have fun. When Carla's business trip came around 7 months ago, Elle encouraged her to take advantage of the opportunity to let loose and flirt with her male co-workers, especially because she would be away from home and me. Carla then admitted to having made out with someone during her work trip but refused to tell me his name. She informed me that after returning from the vacation, she felt terrible shame but was too afraid to admit it. However, Elle was overjoyed for her and encouraged her to branch out beyond our marriage. Carla stated that going out to clubs and getting attention from men made her feel recognized and validated. It excited her, and she began to pursue that high. She knew she was doing something bad all along, but she couldn't stop herself. So, when I finally suggested counseling, she was worried she'd give in and tell me the truth, forcing me to leave her. Instead, she sought therapy as a cover-up. These so-called treatment sessions were not actually therapy at all. They were just meetings with Elle to gossip and vent. Carla said that she trusted Elle fully because they had known each other for years and she believed Elle knew her better than anyone else. Elle's influence grew so strong that Carla began to internalize what her friend told her, that she deserved freedom and excitement, regardless of the consequences. When I approached her and explained my worries, Elle would convince Carla that I was controlling or toxic, that I was preventing her from expressing her true self. In fact, it was because of Elle that Carla had begged for an open marriage, expecting me to give in. But, to her amazement, I hadn't. Rather, I had kicked her out. Inside, Carla informed me that she had wanted to tell me the truth after that, but Elle had persuaded her to keep control of the situation, to keep me on edge and force me to chase her instead. Elle had forcefully persuaded Carla not to apologize at this lunch, suggesting that she should demand what she wanted from me. However, Elle's advice backfired, and instead of breaking, I appeared more determined than ever to pursue a divorce. That's why Carla eventually revealed the truth. Carla urged me to not leave her. She admitted that she had most likely lost her mind temporarily, that Elle's influence had muddled her judgment. She said that because her buddy was a relationship expert, she believed her counsel. However, it was now evident that none of it had helped, it had just exacerbated the situation. Carla stated that now that she had finally come clean, she was ready to pursue legitimate therapy and, if I was willing, attend marriage counseling together. I could tell Carla was eager for one last shot to recreate what we had, promising to do everything it needed to make up. However, I was unwilling to give her another chance. Clearly, Elle had influenced my wife's decision, but she wasn't the only issue here. Carla had also been involved in all of this. She had made her own decisions, deliberately and knowingly. For months, she could have mended our connection by having an honest discussion about her feelings as an adult. Instead, she chose to keep everything bottled up and succumb to Elle's destructive advice. She had gaslighted me, twisted me, and rejected my emotions, all while claiming everything was fine. Also, she had cheated on me. And now, when it was too late, she had only spoken the truth out of desperation. My husband's ex and male tried to humiliate me for years until their almost anniversary stunt backfired and he finally cut them off for good. For reference, I, 28F, and my husband Shaw, 28M, have been married for 2 years. Shaw and I dated for 2 years before, but we'd known each other since high school. We didn't start dating for a few years after graduation. I met him at a restaurant unexpectedly, exchanged numbers, went on a few dates, and that's how we ended ourselves here, nearly 4 years later. Shaw was dating Diane, another high school girl, before I met her. She was a grade below us and had known Shaw since middle school. He and I were not really close, but we had a lot of shared acquaintances back in school, so I saw a lot of him and Diane together. After we graduated from high school, I lost touch with him because he moved to college in a distant state and we didn't see much of one another. When we finally met at the restaurant some years later, I asked him about Diane. He told me that they had split up a year and a half ago. She was the one who dumped him because she wanted different things in life and needed a break to travel the world. But she promised to come back to him someday. Which simply meant she wanted to be alone for a time, date other men without guilt, and retain Shaw as a backup plan. So, following the breakup, he remained friends with her but reduced contact. By the time we met, he'd nearly completely moved on from Diane. I had also begun to see him in a new light. He had matured much since our previous meeting in high school. Shaw and I reconnected 4 years ago and soon became friends. We still have the same laid-back relationship. He claims that is something he never had with Diane. She was continually trying to get him to chase after her because she thought it made her more beautiful. She flirted with other guys, went out with her friends without speaking to him for days, and never asked Shah how he felt about anything. He stayed with her because he was young and stupid, and he felt obligated to make the relationship work because they had been together for so long. Another factor was that his mother, Sharon, 49F, was a major fan of Diane. Diane had met my mother-in-law numerous times while they were together. Sharon praised Diane and pretended to be someone else whenever Diane visited. According to Shah, Diane did the same thing for Sharon, showering her with accolades and acting like a completely different person to impress her. They would chat about other people, particularly Shah's female acquaintances, whom he despised, and sometimes even about him. Shah's aunts and cousins. Diane is also conventionally attractive, which makes Sharon appreciate her even more. I'm not sure why that exists, but it does. Shah told me that Sharon continued to invite Diane to family occasions and holiday dinners after their breakup. He tried talking to his mother about it, urging her not to invite Diane, but Sharon refused. She stated that she really liked her and that even though they had split up, she and Diane remained friends, so she saw nothing wrong with inviting her around. They spoke almost every other week and were really good friends. So this persisted even after I began dating Shah and he introduced me to his family. I felt strange about it at first, and still do. But there was a reason I had tolerated it for so long. Shah initially brought me home to meet his family for Christmas 4 years ago. We had been dating for about 8 months. Diane was also present, and she treated me horribly the entire time. She noticed my appearance, height, clothes, makeup, you name it. She was skilled enough to make everything sound funny, as if she was joking, but Shah knew exactly what she was doing and stood up for me. Sharon, on the other hand, quickly shut it down and asked me if I had a problem with Diane's jokes, putting me in the position. I knew that if I indicated I wasn't good with it, they'd make it appear as if I was insecure or jealous, putting me down even further. So I resolved to present a strong front and say, I don't care. It was petty of me, but the moment I said it, I saw their expressions. They seemed surprised and annoyed. That's when I realized I'd done the correct thing. When Shah and I came home, he apologized to me for Sharon and Diane's behavior. He promised me he'd make sure his mother stopped inviting Diane to family functions. But I was the one who warned him not to do that. I knew the type of woman they were, and I didn't want to lose to them, if you get my drift. I didn't want them to believe they were intimidating me or making me feel insecure. Because they had not. And I felt compelled to prove it. I explained this to Shah, and although he was astonished by my approach, he stopped interfering after that day. Since then, Diane has attended every single family function Sharon has thrown. Every time they act the same way with me. Snide remarks. Backhanded compliments. Constant attempts to bring up Diane's past with Shah, even when it is entirely unrelated, in order to make things difficult for me. I've confronted everything with a brave face, and I try to remain as unmoved as possible. Sharon has even stated multiple times that Diane was her ideal daughter-in-law and would have made a better bride for Shah. Indirectly, of course. It was bothersome, but I tried to seem unconcerned. Because as long as Shah was by my side, I didn't mind what others said. Sharon and Diane could talk for hours on end, and it wouldn't matter to me. That's how I've handled things for the past 4 years. And I intended to maintain the same mindset for the next 4. I was not going to be the first one to snap, that was for sure. Now let's get into what actually happened, the incident that brought me here. Sharon became 49 years old 3 days ago. Every year, she throws a big celebration for her family and friends. This year, Shah did not want to attend. Instead, he wanted to attend his co-worker's engagement celebration, which happened to fall on the same day. And he had good reasons. His co-worker was only getting engaged once, and they were really close. However, Sharon refused to accept it. She made him pledge to attend her birthday party instead. And after days of pressure, she wore him out. So we decided to go. Diane was invited to the function, just like any other. And she dressed to the nines. For some reason, Sharon was also overdressed. But it was her birthday, so I let that one go. Shah and I had agreed to leave after Sharon cut the cake and attend the engagement celebration. At around 5:30 p.m., my father-in-law brought out the cakes, and to our astonishment, there were 2. One of them stated, "Happy almost anniversary." Shah and I were puzzled. We had no idea what the other cake meant, and neither did anyone else. We waited for the birthday girl to explain. Instead, Diane took over. To our surprise, she took Shah's arm and dragged him to stand close to her. We were too surprised to respond because he had suddenly been forced into the spotlight, and everyone was staring at him. Then Diane began chatting. She began by telling that almost 10 years ago, on Sharon's birthday, Shah had gotten down on one knee and handed her a promise ring. They were both 18 years old at the time, set to go to various colleges. 10 years later, she still wore the same ring. To prove that, she proudly raised her hand in front of everyone. Then she wrapped Shah in an awkward hug, which he did not respond to. Sharon encouraged them, smiling as she explained that she was ready to let them steal her thunder this time so they could enjoy what may have been. The whole situation was so absurd that Shah and I stood there with our mouths agape, just like the rest of the guests. For several minutes, no one spoke. Because what could you possibly say in response to something this insane? But Diane kept going. She joked about Shah being her almost husband, and Sharon being her almost mother-in-law, thus today was their almost anniversary. As if we didn't get the joke. Then Sharon sliced the so-called anniversary cake. She started by feeding Diane a slice. Then she tried feeding it to Shah. That's when Shah appeared to snap back to reality. He backed away from his mother when she brought the cake close to his mouth. Sharon was astonished and questioned him, "What's wrong?" That's when all hell broke loose. Shah exploded. He began shouting at Sharon and Diane, calling them out for what they had just done. Years of pent-up rage eventually spilled out, right there, in the thick of the celebration. He ripped into them, calling them shallow, ignorant, and so self-centered that they had become entirely insane. He admitted that he felt humiliated to have ever been engaged with Diane. He was even more mortified that he was biologically connected to Sharon. Because they were the trashiest women he'd ever met. I have to admit that his reaction surprised me. Shah is normally a pretty calm guy. He rarely yells or gets furious with others. It takes a lot to drive him to the brink. But Sharon and Diane had finally finished it. With each other's assistance, of course. After shouting at them, Shah stormed out of the party, followed by me. Instead, we took a taxi directly to his co-worker's place. I tried to talk to him in the cab, but he was clearly agitated. He said he didn't want to talk about his mother or his ex at that time. So I dropped it. When we arrived at the engagement party, his attitude gradually improved as he greeted his friends and coworkers. I was happy to see he was doing well. When we returned home, Shah was in a much better mood. So I decided to bring up what happened at Sharon's party again, hoping that he would want to talk about it now. But he didn't. Instead, I received an earful about how some of this was also my fault. When I recalled the event, he admitted that Sharon and Diane had attempted to embarrass me with that ludicrous cake. But I wasn't completely innocent. He reminded me that for years, I had forced him to remain silent and let Sharon and Diane do whatever they wanted. Because I felt I needed to demonstrate that I didn't care. I had made it all about myself. My urge to show others how unconcerned I was. But in doing so, I entirely forgot that Shah was equally implicated in this mess as I was. And it was getting on his nerves. While Sharon, Diane, and I were competing in mind games, Shah was hurting. Nobody bothered to check on him or ask how he felt about anything. He did not anticipate his mother or ex to show him any consideration. But he expected it of me. And in that moment, he told me something that struck me hard. I'd let him down by prioritizing my own feelings over his in the scenario. That night, I protested with him, telling him that he was being far too harsh and cruel to me. But now that I've had time to think about it, I believe he was correct. I had pushed my husband to remain silent for years while his mother welcomed his ex to family gatherings only to bring me down. Okay, I apologized to Shah this evening. I read the comments, did some reflection, and even discussed it with a few of my friends. I concluded that I was in the wrong here, and that what he said that day was accurate. I had been putting my feelings before of his, and I was so busy behaving as if Diane and Sharon's behavior didn't disturb me that I didn't even consider the possibility that it did bother Shah. For his sake, I should have allowed him terminate this if he wanted to. I forced him to ignore his own feelings for years so that I could win a sick mind game with individuals I didn't even like. And in doing so, I risked the one connection that was most important to me. I had made a serious mistake and realized I needed to make amends. Shah had been giving me the cold shoulder since the party, and I had tried to pretend it didn't bother me. It's something I've always done, and it's been a problem for a long time. My natural reaction is to pretend that things don't upset me, even when they do. I want to be viewed as unconcerned and unaffected by anything, so I act like it and suppress my emotions. I now recognize that this is a really harmful coping method. I absolutely need to work on this if I want my marriage to work. I skipped work today and decided to get him dinner at his favorite restaurant, as well as a chocolate cake with the words, "I'm sorry," written on it. I returned home, set everything up, and tried to make it as romantic as possible, because I know he likes sappy rom-com style apologies. Also, I was really sorry for what I had put him through, even if it was inadvertent. He arrived home from work in the evening and was surprised to see what I had planned for him. He forgave me within 15 minutes of his arrival. We had a tearful reconciliation, and I ended up crying because I was afraid I'd lose him over it. When he wasn't speaking to me, I felt completely adrift. We spoke it out, and everything is well between us now. Since I admitted my mistake, I revealed to him my constant desire to be viewed as calm and laid back, someone nonchalant for no other reason than it seems cool, and because I don't want to be vulnerable in front of others. That is the underlying explanation for this entire catastrophe. He recognized and respected the fact that I admitted it and stated that I needed to work on it rather than shoving it down and suppressing my emotions. He also apologized for being nasty to me, which I don't believe he needed to do. He did it because he is a good man and loves me, which makes me feel like I have won in life. After supper, we finally discussed what had transpired to Diane and Sharon. I hadn't heard from either of them since the party, and my battle with Shah had pushed the whole issue out of my mind. Sharon, on the other hand, had been continually texting Shah, attempting to persuade him to apologize to Diane, who was supposedly distraught and stricken with grief as a result of Shah's treatment of her. I had to work pretty hard not to roll my eyes when I read the messages Sharon sent. She was clearly attempting to guilt-trip him into apologizing to the woman. Sharon pretended that the cake and the entire almost anniversary farce were nothing more than a joke. There was nothing deeper behind it. But I called BS on it. This was a married man they were pulling this scam on. Surely, they had the intelligence to recognize how improper and insulting this was towards me. They did it on purpose, since they wanted to humiliate me during the party. So they couldn't simply dismiss it by saying, it was just a joke, and pretend Shah had overreacted. The hubris of them to claim that Shah and I had gone too far or disrespected them by leaving the party was ridiculous. Shah had previously been ignoring her communications, but when I got those messages today, we finally agreed to stop communicating with her. We'd had enough of her crap. And we didn't want any part of it anymore. 3 days ago, Shah and I blocked Sharon from all of our social media accounts. Shah also told his father that he didn't want to speak with his mother anymore. His father appreciated his decision, because he knew Shah's emotions. But he also refused to interfere. He loves his wife and knows he can't leave her, so he's remaining completely out of it, as he has for the past 5 years. I don't agree with my father-in-law's attitude, but I can't do anything about it. Everything had been running perfectly for the preceding 2 days. But then, today, Shah contacted me out of the blue and said he needed to run to the hospital. Apparently, his mother had fallen from the top of the steps and fractured her leg. Shah's maternal uncle had informed him, and he fled immediately upon hearing the news. We both arrived at the hospital at roughly the same time. But before we could enter, Sharon stopped us in our tracks, and she was perfectly well. She and Diane had surprised us in the hospital's parking lot. Then they nonchalantly informed us that this was the only way to grab Shah's attention, because he had blocked them everywhere. They didn't expect me to show up with him. Instead of acknowledging me, they ignored me and began talking to Shah as if they had done nothing wrong. Diane attempted to explain that everything she did at the party was a prank and that she never meant to insult him. Sharon backed her up. Shah allowed them to converse for a bit. And then, much to their surprise, he told his mother and ex to F off. Then he went away with me once more. Sharon started shouting at us as we got into our different cars. But we didn't stay around to hear what she had to say. I'm sure she was cursing at us, but it didn't matter. She lied to get to meet Shah again. And I couldn't think of anything more manipulative than that. Shah returned home because he was too stressed. I, on the other hand, needed to return to work. While at work, I received a call from an unknown number. It turned out to be Sharon. She screamed at me for 15 seconds before I finally disconnected the call. I'd merely been taken off guard while working. Else, I wouldn't have responded. All I heard were hand-picked swear words spoken at maximum volume. I had no idea why she was furious at me. I had nothing to do with Shah's behavior. She had pushed her own son to that point, not me. Anyway, I blocked her and attempted to go on with my day. When I came back home at 6 p.m., I finally got to speak with Shah. He told me that he had also blocked the rest of his mother's relatives, including his uncle, because it was obvious that they would go to any length to persuade him to forgive Sharon and speak with her. That's all we can do right now since they're not threatening us in any manner, and they're not stalking us on a regular basis, so a restraining order is not an option. Shah also told his father about what happened today, but he still refuses to intervene. It's his choice, and Shah adores his father, so I won't say anything right now. But, personally, I don't think my father-in-law's behavior is a wonderful example of being a good father. The least he could do was speak to his wife and advocate for his son. But he won't even do it. Shah adores his father, but the man has never stood up for him when it comes to Sharon. I've only kept my mouth shut out of respect for their relationship. Otherwise, I'd have a lot to say about how incredibly selfish his entire family is. They never think about anyone other than themselves. I will never understand how a man like Shah could come from such a family. Hello everyone, it's been a week since I last updated. Yesterday, Shah and I decided to file a restraining order against Sharon and Diane because of something they did to me. Or, more precisely, attempted to do. 3 days ago, on Thursday, I was returning from work. On Thursdays, I normally go to a coffee shop near my office and purchase myself a frappuccino as a treat. Last Thursday, I was planning to do the same. But as soon as I walked into the shop, Diane and Sharon rose from their chairs, where they had been waiting for me, and rushed straight at me with their coffees. Before I could even respond, they both flung their drinks in my face. Then Diane took some whipped cream from her cup and put it into my hair. I was stunned. I just froze on the spot as everyone laughed. The baristas ran over to assist me clean up. They did their best to remove the muck off of me, so a big thanks to them for basically quitting their work to assist me. Even the other customers were patient and kind. When I finally got the most of it off, my clothing were sticky and unpleasant, and my hair was horrible, but at least I was cleaner. Some of the other patrons inquired about me, and one even asked if I wanted to contact the cops. So I did. I reported Diane and Sharon and filed charges against them. However, they just received a fine, a slap on the wrist, because this was a misdemeanor and they had not physically hurt me. Unless you consider my clothes, which I can't wear to work again due to fading brown coffee stains on the front. Nonetheless, we filed charges, and the incident is now on their record, which will strengthen our case. Shah wanted to make this public, so he posted about it on social media so that more people would be aware and avoid Diane and his mother. But he changed his mind when he saw I just wanted to move on from this without any further complications. Honestly, that encounter shook me more than I expected. It may seem ridiculous, but it actually made me think. If things had escalated, it might have been far worse than them throwing coffee in my face. They could have really injured me if they wanted to. They were familiar with my routine thanks to my social media presence. They had my address. This could have gone extremely wrong. Shah and I had been considering moving since we had a good financial year. But with what occurred, we will definitely be going. We had also been thinking about having children and we're going to start trying soon. But my in-laws will never meet my children. We've also formally cut off my father-in-law, who refused to intervene even after the coffee incident. Shah got into a heated argument with him and eventually cut him off. And honestly, I am relieved. I'll never have to see or hear from these folks again. My brother mocked my act of kindness. Now he is in prison, his fortune is gone, and karma served every receipt he thought he could dodge. I never imagined that my brother's true nature would be revealed through a casual act of compassion, but here we are. I am still in the process of analyzing the events that transpired last Friday. Context: I have consistently been the black sheep of the family due to my decision to establish my own path rather than participating in the family enterprise. Noah, my brother, succeeded our father, and he ensures that no one forgets it. However, I have accomplished quite a bit for myself. I am typically responsible for the cost of our family outings. Friday was intended to be a day of festivity. Noah had been boasting about a significant transaction that he had successfully completed, so I proposed that we all dine at this upscale restaurant in the heart of downtown. Noah, his wife, Isabella, and their daughter Hazel were present, as was my mother Cora. Hazel, who is 8 years old, is likely the sole authentic individual in our family, with the exception of myself. The evening began in a typical manner. Noah's typical self-importance dominated the conversation, and Isabella nodded in agreement as if he were divulging the secrets of the universe. Over the years, I have developed the ability to disregard it, instead concentrating on Hazel's narratives regarding her academic pursuits and her most recent artistic endeavor. Things began to change when our food arrived. I observed an elderly man seated on a bench outside the restaurant through the window. He was attempting to maintain his warmth in the evening chill, and he was carrying a small cart that appeared to contain all of his possessions. I have been privileged enough to be in a position where I can assist others, so I discreetly requested that our server include an additional meal in our order, their soup of the day and a sandwich, and have it packed for us to take with us. The exchange was not observed by any individual. Noah chuckled. "Are you once again assuming the role of the savior, little brother?" I chose to disregard him and proceeded with my discussion with Hazel regarding her science assignment. However, Noah was unable to relinquish it. "You know," he stated, loud enough for tables in the vicinity to hear, It's funny how you're always trying to prove you're better than everyone else with these charitable acts. Is it because you're trying to forget when we were kids and Dad had to bail out your failed ventures? I maintained my attention on Hazel, but she had become silent, observing the adults with that perceptive expression that children exhibit when they perceive that something is amiss. Isabella was already chuckling in anticipation of Noah's subsequent statement. The server returned with the packaged meal, and I excused myself to exit the establishment. I could hear Noah's voice echoing through the restaurant's open window as I approached the elderly man to offer him the food. "Even homeless people have more worth than you," he responded. "At least they're honest about who they are. You're just pretending you're not the same failure you've always been." The elderly man had just expressed his gratitude to me when the table erupted in hilarity. A chorus that felt as though it was drilling into my cranium was formed by my mother's nervous titter, Isabella's shrill cackle, and Noah's booming laugh. Hazel was the sole individual who maintained her silence, her eyes wide with concern and her face plastered against the window. I returned to the interior, sat down, and consumed my supper in silence. Noah continued his performance by interjecting with jokes about my charity cases, and my attempt to buy a personality. Each comment elicited the anticipated laughter. I observed Hazel pushing her food around her dish, her previous enthusiasm having been completely deflated. I withdrew my card without speaking when the check arrived. When I stood up, Noah was in the midst of another narrative regarding his business acumen. Isabella expressed her gratitude for the dinner, without even raising her head from her phone. I observed each of them, my mother, who was avoiding eye contact, Noah and Isabella, who were absorbed in their own world, and Hazel, who abruptly rose to offer me an embrace. I embraced her for a brief period of time before placing my card on the table. "The bill's paid. I need to go." That was the extent of my remarks prior to my departure. Noah was likely to erupt into another commentary regarding my dramatic exits, as I observed him rolling his eyes through the window. They are unaware that I utilize the weekend to conduct inquiries and make phone calls regarding matters that I have neglected for an excessive amount of time. Perhaps it is time to examine the extent to which my brother has been fulfilling the responsibilities of which he is so proud. I have provided more assistance to the family business than they are aware. The elderly individual was still present when I departed. He had meticulously preserved half of his sandwich by enveloping it in the paper napkin for later. He expressed his gratitude once more with a level of dignity that Noah would have been unable to comprehend. I presented him with my business card and advised him to visit my office if he required any assistance. Noah believes that one's worth is determined by the extent to which they can extract from others. He is on the brink of discovering his error. Initially, I would like to extend my gratitude to all of you for your encouraging feedback on my most recent post. Numerous events have transpired, necessitating that I disclose my findings. The situation is more severe than I had anticipated. The past 2 weeks have been intriguing. My phone has been inundated with messages from family members, each of which is more urgent than the previous one. I have not replied to any of them, with the exception of Hazel's texts regarding her art endeavors. Her suffering should not be a consequence of the adult drama. The truly intriguing aspect of the situation commenced on the previous Tuesday, when I received an email from Eliza, an acquaintance of my father who is responsible for certain administrative tasks related to the family business. The subject line was straightforward: "It is imperative that we engage in conversation." I was left feeling frigid after the 2-hour video call that ensued. It transpired that my brother Noah's significant transactions were not quite as substantial as he had previously asserted. Eliza had initially observed minor discrepancies in the accounts, which gradually became more apparent. She attempted to discuss the matter with my mother. However, Cora dismissed it with her customary "Noah knows what he's doing" attitude. I discreetly perused the records that Eliza forwarded to me over the course of the subsequent few days. Noah had been systematically siphoning money from the company for years, and the pattern was evident. Additionally, it is not limited to negligible quantities. We are discussing millions of dollars in consulting fees to shell companies that appear to be connected to personal accounts. The irony: some of those accounts were funded by my personal investments in the family business. Guess to whom Noah turned whenever he required a capital injection to finance his purported expansion strategies. Additionally, I had consistently rendered assistance, under the impression that I was contributing to our father's legacy. Isabella contacted me yesterday. I am not expressing regret, but I am inquiring as to whether I will be present at the board meeting next week. Her voice was characterized by the artificial tenderness she employs when she desires something. I allowed it to be transferred to voicemail. However, her message was quite candid. "Noah says it's just a formality, but he really needs you there to sign some papers. Family has to stick together, right?" "Exactly. Family. She is unaware that I have already communicated with the board members. It has been revealed that Noah has been providing the board with various versions of the company's status for months, each of which has been meticulously constructed to conceal his mismanagement. Nevertheless, numerical data is indisputable. These figures also reflect a pattern of systematic fraud and larceny. The most alarming discovery was made when reviewing the timestamps of specific transactions. Do you recall the elderly individual who was standing outside the restaurant? Noah had transferred a substantial sum to an offshore account on the same day that I purchased him dinner. This sum was precisely the amount required to cover the payroll of our father's longest-serving employees. He has been mocking others for demonstrating fundamental human decency while simultaneously playing with people's livelihoods. Cora transmitted a text message this morning. Please, Benjamin, whatever you're doing, think about your brother's family. Think about Hazel. I am contemplating Hazel. I am contemplating the manner in which her father has been robbing her future while simultaneously teaching her that cruelty is permissible, as long as it is done with a sense of humor. Tomorrow is the date of the board meeting. Noah is unaware that I have already submitted a comprehensive audit report. He is unaware that Eliza has been meticulously chronicling every detail for several months. He is unaware that his idyllic existence, which is characterized by privilege and ridicule, is on the brink of dissolution. Noah sent me a text message, which caused my phone to vibrate once more. Hey, little brother? We need you at the office tomorrow. Time to step up and be part of the family business finally. What do you say? What should I say? Nothing? Not yet. However, I have organized 3 folders of documents, one for the board, one for the authorities. Additionally, one is designated for our mother, who will be compelled to confront the transformation of her golden child. In the remarks of my most recent post, a few of you inquired as to why I did not confront Noah at the restaurant. In reality, I have been resisting him throughout my life, albeit not in the manner that he perceived. He will comprehend the precise nature of the individual he has been disparaging for the past decade tomorrow. The elderly fellow from the restaurant? Last week, he visited my office. Years ago, it transpired that he was employed by my father. The final few pieces of the puzzle were filled in by the anecdotes he shared about Noah's early days in the company. I have scheduled a vehicle to transport Hazel to her preferred art class tomorrow, following her dismissal from school. She should not be compelled to observe the impending events. At times, safeguarding family members necessitates safeguarding them from other family members. The meeting is scheduled for 9 a.m. Tomorrow I will provide you with an update on the progress. But one thing is certain, Noah is about to discover that karma does not always act in a positive manner. Update 2, the board meeting has concluded. I am currently seated in my vehicle, attempting to comprehend the events of the past 4 hours. A few of you requested an immediate update, so I am providing it. At 8:30 a.m., I arrived ahead of schedule. There was only Eliza in the conference room, and she was in the process of assembling the projector. She gave me a slight nod. Everything was prepared. I positioned my 3 containers on the table and awaited instruction. At 8:55 a.m., Noah entered the room, with Isabella following in his footsteps as she had done in the past. When he recognized me, he actually smiled. That same smug smirk that he had worn at the restaurant. Finally decided to join the family business, little brother? I refrained from responding. I observed as the board members entered, followed by our mother. Cora appeared anxious, her gaze alternating between Noah and me. She was aware that something was amiss. However, she was unaware of the impending events. Noah initiated the meeting with his customary enthusiasm, discussing future expansions and growth projections. I permitted him to continue for precisely 15 minutes. Allow him to further excavate that pit. I then proceeded to access the initial folder. We should review these transactions from the past 3 years before we discuss expansion plans, I stated, passing copies to each board member. Noah's expression remained unchanged. However, his left eye twitched, a symptom that has been present in him since infancy. Isabella likely reached for her phone to initiate damage control. I had already blocked the room's signal. One board member perused the pages and inquired, "Benjamin, what is the subject of this?" I responded, "It pertains to accountability." I then turned to Noah. "Would you like to explain the consulting fees to Maxwell Holdings, or should I?" His visage was devoid of color. Maxwell Holdings, his initial shell company. Named after his college companion, poorly executed. Isabella intervened. "This is absurd. Noah has grown this company tenfold. You're just jealous because of what?" I inquired. "Because I chose my own path while your husband was stealing from employee pension funds." That captivated the attention of all individuals. Cora attempted to communicate, but I had already initiated the second folder. 3 years of systematic theft, I continued. Shell companies, fake consultancy fees, inflated contracts. But the pension fund, Noah, that's what made this criminal. You are incapable of comprehending, Noah exclaimed, his voice quivering. The market was volatile. I needed to cover some temporary shortfalls. Temporary? I extracted the bank statements. Is that why you bought the yacht last month? To cover shortfalls? Isabella's unwavering composure was compromised. What yacht? It transpired that Noah had neglected to inform his wife of his minor acquisitions. The vacation residence in the Bahamas. The offshore accounts. The debts associated with wagering. The subsequent 2 hours were characterized by a flurry of denials, accusations, and revelations. Noah employed every conceivable method. Deflection. Emotional manipulation. Even endeavoring to pin certain transactions to Eliza. However, I had documentation for each and every item. Each transfer. Each and every fraudulent contract, everything that is false. He ultimately exclaimed, I fulfilled my obligations. Dad would have understood. He knew business isn't about playing nice. That was the moment when Cora finally discovered her voice. Your father, she said with quietness, fired his own brother for taking a single unauthorized commission. He would be ashamed. Noah chuckled. It was the same cruel chuckle from the restaurant. Ashamed? He directed his attention toward me. He'd be ashamed of him, the disappointment of abandoning the family business to play humanitarian. At least I stayed. At least I tried to keep his legacy alive. I opened the third folder and inquired, by stealing from it? The one containing the police reports. The room fell silent. Noah's complexion underwent an intriguing gray hue. You would not, he murmured. Remember what you said about homeless people having more worth than me, I recited. At least they're honest about who they are. Noah's immediate removal was approved by the board. I had already completed the requisite paperwork as the dominant shareholder, a fact that he never bothered to verify. Isabella withdrew from the voting process midway through. Her flawless mask, entirely obliterated. Silent weeping streamed down Cora's face as she remained until the conclusion. She caressed my arm after the event concluded. Benjamin, I don't. Just make sure Hazel is okay. Noah attempted one final attempt as I was departing. You can't do this to me, I'm your brother. I retreated. No, Noah. What you are is a thief who happened to be born to the same parents as me. And now, you're unemployed. I hear the restaurant down the street is hiring. Try not to mock their charitable customers. The evidence is currently being reviewed by the police. Tomorrow, the board will convene to deliberate on restructuring. I have recently received a text message from Isabella's attorney. However, Hazel's art teacher conveyed the most critical message. She had the best time in class today. Won first prize for her painting. The subject? A man is seen dividing his sandwich. Occasionally, karma operates in a manner that is enigmatic. Occasionally, it functions precisely as intended. I will provide another update once all matters have been resolved. Right now, I must convene with the trustees of the pension fund. In contrast to certain individuals, I am a proponent of repaying my debts. Summing up, I have not provided an update in over a month, and I have committed to disclosing the outcome. Revenge, as the saying goes, is a dish that is best enjoyed chilled. I received mine with an accompanying accompaniment of complete destruction. We should commence with Noah. Do you recall how he consistently boasted about his business acumen? The authorities did not find it to be as remarkable as they had anticipated. Last week, they conducted an invasion of his residence. It transpired that my evidence was merely the top of the iceberg. Records of money laundering dating back 5 years were discovered. The most delightful aspect? It is likely that he believed himself to be too intelligent to be discovered, as he had taken meticulous notes of everything. 2 days subsequent to the board meeting, Isabella submitted a divorce petition. Not out of moral outrage, mind you. However, I ensured that she was informed about Noah's fiancée in the Bahamas. The individual for whom he acquired a residence using company funds. The same residence that Isabella believed was an investment property. Her attorney reached out to me in order to obtain evidence for the divorce proceedings. Everything was supplied by me. Without cost. The expression on Noah's face when he realized that his wife's counsel was aware of every detail of his financial crimes. Invaluable. However, I was not yet finished. Do you recall the elderly gentleman from the restaurant? He was not a typical former employee. He was the original associate of my father, and he was instrumental in the establishment of the company. Years ago, Noah had coerced him into early retirement by fabricating performance evaluations. His pension has been reinstated with retroactive pay, and he has been appointed to the board. What was his initial action? Voting to authorize a comprehensive audit of all decisions made by Noah over the past decade. The local news was impacted by the pension fund scandal. Noah's image was prominently featured on the front page as he was led from his residence. Who are his acquaintances in the upper level of society? They disappeared. It is remarkable how rapidly individuals distance themselves when the facade collapses. Cora attempted to mediate the situation by imploring me to withdraw the charges. She begged, "He is still your brother." I presented her with the surveillance footage that captured Noah ridiculing elderly employees as he reduced their retirement benefits. After that, she discontinued her defense of him. Company, I have assumed responsibility. However, it was not in the manner that Noah had encouraged me to. I have transformed it into a corporation that is owned by its employees. Equity is now granted to all employees who have served for an extended period. The expression on their features when they discovered that they would be shareholders, rather than mere employees. That is the embodiment of authentic business leadership. Isabella's social circle has collapsed. It has been discovered that individuals are reluctant to associate with individuals who were aware of pension fraud and chose to remain silent. Last week, her membership in the country club was terminated. It appears that they have established standards. Who knew? Noah's final attempt. Noah attempted to reach out to me via his attorney, offering to mend things if I dropped the charges. I forwarded the message to the prosecutors as evidence of attempted witness tampering. He is currently facing a sentence of 15 years, not 5. However, the genuine karma arrived yesterday. Noah believed himself to be astute by concealing funds in cryptocurrency accounts. He was unaware that I had been monitoring those accounts since the very beginning. He was unable to retrieve them from his parents' residence, where he had been residing since the divorce, as they were empty. Every penny had been transferred to a trust fund for Hazel. Regarding Hazel, she is currently residing with Isabella's sister. I have arranged for her to attend the most prestigious art school in the metropolis. Her college education will be funded by the trust fund. Noah is incapable of handling any of it. His daughter will be afforded opportunities that he is unable to control or seize. The elderly individual who initiated this entire situation? He is flourishing. I have established a foundation in his honor to provide assistance to retired employees. Who was the initial recipient? Noah's former aide, whom he terminated for excessively inquiring about the accounting. Yesterday, I received a letter from Noah's penitentiary. He stated that he has finally comprehended the concept of genuine worth. I had it framed and posted it in the boardroom, adjacent to the new company mission statement. Integrity is not negotiable. Some of you inquired as to whether I harbor any remorse for the devastation I caused to my brother's life. No, I do not. He had the opportunity to prioritize compassion over cruelty and integrity over greed for an extended period of time. He consistently selected the incorrect option. Last night, I returned to that restaurant. Seated at the same table. However, this time, I was not accompanied by my family. I was present with the elderly man, who is now a member of the board, and we deliberated on the organization's new charitable foundation. I observed an individual who appeared to be Noah's erstwhile golf partner bussing tables as we departed. Karma is a process that requires time to unfold. However, receipts are included when it arrives. This will serve as my concluding update. The organization is flourishing. Hazel is thriving in her new educational institution. And Noah? It appears that orange has become his new signature color. Occasionally, the most effective form of retribution is not merely observing an individual's downfall. It is ensuring that they have a comprehensive understanding of all the losses they experienced when they reached the nadir. Mocked for my weight, I transformed with confidence. When I returned, my family grew jealous and tried to bring me down. Growing up, I was always an overweight child. I've always been bigger than the majority of the other kindergarten students. While my peers were still figuring out what made them distinctive, my size had already stood out. As I grew older, the weight I carried became more visible. By high school, I was indisputably overweight, and my shape and girth served as a continuous reminder of my differences. College was not much different. While some of my peers began to discover who they were or explore new aspects of themselves, I stayed trapped in the same identity, overweight and occasionally fighting with it. It wasn't easy being the bigger kid. It exposed me to continual ridicule, mockery, and nasty comments from people who didn't know or cared to understand me. Growing up, I was bullied more than I'd want to recall. Classmates teased me mercilessly. Their words ate away at me, creating profound doubts and self-doubt that, at times, felt hard to overcome. They'd call me names and make crude jokes, and I'd frequently be the punchline. I was always singled out, as if I were somehow unworthy of affection or companionship. I was continually excluded from games, parties, and gatherings. It felt like I was always on the outside, watching everyone else go through the regular ups and downs of childhood and adolescence from a distance I couldn't reach. These years of bullying influenced how I perceived myself and responded to the world. I felt out of place with others, so I sought sanctuary in books. I lost myself in literature and stories that helped me escape my daily troubles. Books did not judge me. They did not ridicule me. I became known as the nerd, and I didn't like it all that much. My younger sister, Bonnie, was radically different from me. She was only a year younger than me and possessed an effortless charisma that drew others to her. Bonnie thrived in social situations, whereas I was shy and reserved. She had a magnetic personality. She could come into a room and immediately have everyone smiling, laughing, and absolutely fascinated by her. Bonnie didn't just make friends easily. She seemed to have an intrinsic ability to persuade people to support her, almost as if she were the sun around which everyone gravitated. Regardless of our differences, I adored her. I took my job as her older sister seriously, feeling fiercely protective whenever she needed it. When she began attending the same high school as mine, I was overjoyed. Initially, being Bonnie's older sister made me feel proud, as if I had a particular place in her life. However, as she grew older, things began to alter. As Bonnie settled into high school and began to create her own personality, I saw a difference in how she perceived me. She began to see how different we were, and how differently we were treated. Whereas I was the bookish, quiet kind, she was vivacious and popular, someone who rapidly established herself among the cool circle. I observed as she became aware of my peculiarities and insecurities, which others considered uncool. Bonnie began to distance herself from me as she found new pals. She would then try to actively ignore or avoid me in school. That hurt. It genuinely pained me that my own sibling saw me as inferior. Nonetheless, I did my best to accept her decision, to give her the space she appeared to need, even if it hurt to think I was losing not only my sister, but also a friend. Bonnie gradually stopped ignoring me and began interacting with people who made me feel like an outcast. If Bonnie and I met in the corridors or at lunch, she and her pals would take advantage of any opportunity to embarrass me. They'd taunt me in front of other students or, worse, try to trip me as I passed past with my lunch tray, just to make everyone laugh. It seemed like I was losing her, not only to new people, but to the same mocking and nasty conduct I'd had to put up with for so long. I was always on guard, attempting to avoid not just my peers' criticism but also the humiliation inflicted by my own sister. It hurt a lot, especially because it came from someone I had always admired and looked up to. When Bonnie invited her pals over, they would try to gang up on me at home. They would rush into my room without knocking, then laugh and gesture to my body. They'd fling insults like geek and fatty at me like they were nothing. I'd feel like a zoo animal, as if I were there to entertain them. When they entered my personal space in my room, I felt small and alone, as if I were an alien in my own home. I tried talking to my parents about it several times, hoping they would realize how tough it was for me to deal with Bonnie's conduct. But every time I brought it up, they dismissed my worries. They'd smile and defend her actions, claiming that this was how siblings related, and that Bonnie was merely playing with me. They told me it was harmless, even suggesting that I loosen up and stop taking everyone's taunts so seriously. They told me that I was older and should be more patient and resilient. So, not only did I face years of bullying from my peers, including my own sister, but my concerns were repeatedly rejected by my parents. It made me feel isolated, as if no one in my own family realized or understood how deeply it hurt. The only time I ever felt properly noticed by our parents was when I received my grades. Academics had always come effortlessly to me, and I became accustomed to receiving high grades. In a way, it was the one area where I felt superior to everyone else. It was also the one way I could make my parents proud. The one part of my life that they appeared to actually care about. My parents enjoyed bragging about my accomplishments to friends and family, portraying me as the family scholar, as if my grades were evidence of their parenting prowess. But Bonnie detested the analogies. She was not an academic overachiever, nor did she want to be, but our parents' repeated reminders of my accomplishments made her resentful. They put my grades up as an example, meaning that she needed to do the same. I could always sense her annoyance and rage, which I assume is why she did what she did to me. Bonnie would occasionally attempt to destroy my hard work in order to get back at me. She'd sneak into my room in the middle of the night and take my homework. Sometimes, shortly before a large task was due, I'd wake up in the morning to find my meticulously finished work gone. Panic would set in, and I'd feverishly hunt through my books, papers, and files, becoming increasingly anxious with each passing minute. And there she'd be, smirking, watching me from the doorway, relishing every moment of my anxiety. To her, it was a minor win, a way to bring me down a peg and remind me that I wasn't invincible. She understood how important my grades were to me, how much of my self-worth I had invested in them, and she enjoyed disturbing that aspect of my life. I only out about her stealing my assignments years later, when she drunkenly admitted one evening. My friendship with Bonnie has grown softer over time. Though we're not close, you might say we've matured a little, and some of the bitterness from our youth has dissipated. However, the strong closeness that siblings often enjoy did not fully emerge between us. After college, I moved away and began constructing a life in a new place with an interesting job and new chances, which meant I didn't visit my family very frequently. As time passed, our communications became limited to occasional phone calls or texts. So, when I decided to travel home for the summer, I was truly excited to see everyone. It had been a long time since we'd all gotten together as a family, and I was excited to catch up and reconnect. However, not everything went as planned. Our family lunch began well enough. Everyone appeared delighted to see me, and for a moment, it felt like old times. That changed, however, when Bonnie unexpectedly revealed her engagement. None of us saw it coming, and we initially assumed she was joking. However, it became evident that she was serious. She proudly put out her hand, displaying a gorgeous ring, and I couldn't help but remark how exquisite it was. I was genuinely happy for her, delighted that she'd finally met someone she loved and who loved her back. Almost as soon as the congratulations subsided, Bonnie turned to me and inquired about my recent activities. I told her about my profession, my life, and how rewarding things had been for me. Before I could finish, she cut me off. "I can't help but say this," she started, smirking. "But why are you still fat? I mean, if your life is really that great, shouldn't you have lost weight by now?" Her remarks hit me like a slap, reawakening old insecurities I thought I had overcome. The room became uncomfortably silent, and I could feel everyone's gaze on me, waiting to see how I would respond. I merely shrugged and tried to laugh awkwardly at her comment. But my parents immediately joined in to criticize me. They began talking about how I was still obese and unmarried, and how they were concerned that I would never have children. I felt so mortified hearing them talk like that. My successes, the profession I was proud of, the life I had made on my own in another city, none of it seemed to matter to them. They were just concerned with my weight and the fact that I did not have my own family. As my parents and sister continued to talk about me, their comments wounded deeper than I imagined. I'd spent years of my life finally coming into my own, gaining confidence and independence, yet, at those moments, I felt like the same nervous, awkward teenager I'd always been, desperate for my family's acceptance. My parents then applauded Bonnie for getting engaged before me and expressed their pride in her. To them, I was the inferior child, successful but not quite enough. What was supposed to be a happy family reunion had swiftly turned into a heartbreaking reminder of old scars. At that point, I felt more like an outsider than ever. Bonnie did not stop. She continued to ask probing questions. "So, when are you getting married? I mean, do you even have a boyfriend?" She was blatantly mocking me in front of everyone by bringing up my romantic life. My parents eagerly jumped on the subject, agreeing with Bonnie that it was past time for me to meet someone before it was too late. They pointed out that Bonnie, being younger, was settling down before me, but I, being older, was still throwing my life away at work. I attempted to argue that I liked my life the way it was, that my profession and freedom provided me with fulfillment. My job paid well, and I was passionate about it. And why did I have to find a man and have a child? I am content just as I am. But my words didn't appear to register. My mother, in particular, appeared disdainful, giving me a pointed look and taunting, "What's the point of earning all that money if you don't have anyone to come home to?" It was as if she couldn't believe that happiness existed outside of marriage or family. Sitting there, I had the typical feeling of being misunderstood, that my life choices were disregarded. This was my family, the ones who should have known me best, but they seemed to be obsessed with a different idea of happiness. I had come home seeking connection and warmth, but instead got judgment and taunts. Bonnie then mentioned that she anticipated me to have at least a +1 by the time her wedding rolled around. She explained that she didn't want people to think her sister was an old, miserable woman who was getting married alone. The comment stung. I simply shook my head and assured her I would try. This is when my parents casually told me that since Bonnie's wedding was approaching, even if I couldn't find a spouse, I could at least try to lose weight and look better for her wedding. They suggested that if I reduced weight, it would be simpler for me to attract a partner. Bonnie agreed with my parents and said she wanted me to lose at least a few pounds. I sat there, astonished and humiliated, with an aching that I hadn't felt in years. How could my relatives talk to me like this? Did I truly deserve their hateful words simply because I was overweight? Was I not meant to have feelings because I was fat? I was a normal human being, just like them. I functioned exactly like everyone else. I never saw my weight as a hindrance, so why should they? I'd even dated men who liked me just the way I was, but my parents and Bonnie were making it appear as if my weight kept me from finding love or having men approach me, which wasn't even true. I wanted to defend myself and tell them how cruel their words were, but I felt paralyzed and unable to find the correct words. Their statements took me back to high school, to the agonizing times when my weight made me a target. I despised how nonchalantly my relatives brought up my deepest fears, seemingly unconcerned about how they affected me. So I sat there, holding in my pain, and let the topic go to anything else. When I returned home from my trip to see my family, I pushed myself into reducing weight with a zeal I had not realized I possessed. It began as a method to prove something to my family, but it eventually grew more personal. I joined a gym, followed a rigorous diet, and even hired a personal trainer. My trainer has been a lifesaver. She knew just how to assist me through a path tailored to my own needs, having gone through her own change from overweight to healthy weight. She created a routine specific to my goals and encouraged me every step of the way, reminding me to give myself grace when I stumbled. This time, everything seemed to click. I started losing weight steadily, and as the pounds fell off, I felt lighter, not just physically but also mentally. For the first time in my life, I began to feel and appear different. My confidence increased quickly. I used to assume that decreasing weight wouldn't have much of an influence, but it has. People see me differently today. Strangers are nicer and more attentive. Friends and colleagues regard me with fresh respect, and I can't deny that this feels like a validation I've never had before. It's as if I've suddenly become more noticeable than I was before. My new body brought a new sense of style. I overhauled my entire wardrobe, filling it with clothing I'd only fantasized about wearing. I even opted for a full hair makeover, attempting a daring and trendy style that I would have been too afraid to try in the past. Perhaps it seems expensive, but I've never felt so good. I look in the mirror now, and I don't recognize the person staring back. It's like meeting a version of myself that I never knew existed. I'm proud of how far I've gone, not just because I've lost weight, but also because I've gained confidence and self-assurance. Bonnie's wedding is approaching, so my family has invited me to fly down and join them for lunch to finalize some details. However, I do not feel like returning home. I don't want my family to ridicule me again and make me feel tiny, especially now that I'm feeling good about myself for the first time in a long while. I don't want to go to Bonnie's wedding anymore because of how she and my parents have treated me. But I know if I don't go, they'll be furious and give me a long lecture about how family is family and how, no matter how heartbroken I am, I must be present for Bonnie's big day. So, would it be wrong for me not to attend my sister's wedding? Update 1. Wow. I'm overwhelmed by everyone's response. Some of your proposals are truly humorous. I can't believe you're encouraging me to show up and mess with my sister now that I've shed so much weight. Growing up as a fat kid had a negative impact on my self-esteem, particularly in terms of how I perceived myself. I struggled with self-doubt for a long time, always believing that I wasn't good enough or didn't measure up to others. But reading all of your responses has been a game changer. It's as if you've helped me see myself in a completely new light, and I'm finally starting to feel more confident than I ever have. In fact, I'm seriously considering turning up to my family's lunch and shocking them. They haven't seen me in a long time, and since I don't use social media, they have no idea how much weight I've dropped. It will be interesting to witness their reactions. Update 2. Okay, Reddit, you're not prepared for this upgrade. Grab some popcorn because things are about to get exciting. I decided to fly down to join my family for lunch. I assumed that when they saw me, they would be happy with the transformation I had undergone, because after all, they had been the ones who pushed me toward it in the first place. Surely, they'd be overjoyed to see the positive improvements in me and finally recognize the effort I'd put in. The instant I walked into my parents' house, their jaws absolutely dropped. They looked at me, astonished, as if they couldn't believe I was the same person. After a time, they stammered, wondering if it was actually me. I gave them a big hug, thrilled with their reaction. They continually complimented my appearance, saying how beautiful I looked and how they couldn't believe it was me. However, when Bonnie came, the situation changed. She didn't notice me at first, disregarding me as if I were invisible, as she had done many times before. But when I rose up to greet her, she did a double take, her eyes widening with surprise. She gave an odd, almost forced laugh before reaching over and pushing her fingers on my stomach, wide-eyed, as if she wanted proof that I had truly dropped all of that weight. My parents chuckled at her reaction and informed her that they couldn't believe it either. As we settled in for lunch, The subject turned to my makeover. Bonnie and my parents bombarded me with questions about how I'd done it, marveling at how different I appeared. Their voices were full of surprise, as if they had never imagined I could look any other way. Bonnie, in particular, kept saying that she had never anticipated me to shift so dramatically. After a while, she said, "When I first requested you to lose weight, I never imagined you'd look this good. I had no idea you had that jawline and those ankles underneath all that fat." I hesitated, trying to retain my cool, and smiled at her before telling her, "Bonnie, I've always been gorgeous. Losing weight simply improved my characteristics." Bonnie, on the other hand, contended that it wasn't just that. There was something else about me that was unique. She then had the audacity to inquire, "Did you have any procedures done on yourself? Because you can't look this fantastic on your own." I could feel my blood starting to boil. The hubris to believe that I required surgery to look attractive, despite the fact that I had worked so hard to achieve my current appearance. I looked her directly in the eyes and said, "Wow, Bonnie. It's amazing how little you think of me. No surgery, just a lot of hard work and self-love, which you should try someday." Bonnie's expression changed from surprise to displeasure, but I didn't care. It felt amazing to finally say something and put her in her place. Before she could react, my parents jumped in, attempting to smooth things over in their own way. "You shouldn't be offended," my mother replied. "All three of us have never seen you look like this before. Honestly, you look more lovely now than Bonnie, and she's the one getting married." Bonnie appeared much angrier following Mom's remark. I simply ignored her and concentrated on my food, allowing my sister to seethe in her rage. Then my mother interjected. "You know, I was thinking, maybe you should go back to your original hair color. I believe you would look even better in your natural hue. This blonde appearance causes you to stand out too much. Maybe you could just return to your former look." Bonnie and my father quickly agreed with her. My father supported my mother, saying that Bonnie was always the blonde daughter in the family and I was the brunette, so it would be a good idea for me to return to my original hair color, which would make me appear more like myself. Hearing their statements, I was taken aback. I suddenly felt like the three of them were ganging up on me and attempting to bring me down. My hairstylist was the one who changed my hair color to blonde because it complemented my skin tone and face better. It had nothing to do with attempting to outperform or overshadow my sister. I could see why Bonnie was jealous of me because I looked so nice right now, but I couldn't figure out why my parents were so unhappy with me. It was as if they wanted to revert me to my original self, despite the fact that they were the ones who wanted me to be more acceptable for their darling daughter's forthcoming wedding. But now that I did, they couldn't accept who I had become. Instead of recognizing my progress, they sought to undermine me. Finally, I questioned my folks. "What is your problem? Why can't I be blonde? Does my sister own that hue or something?" I paused, annoyed. "No, she doesn't. I can be either blonde or brunette. It's my decision. Why does it matter to you so much?" I couldn't understand why they were so obsessed with returning to my former self, as if my appearance had to match who I was. My mother scoffed at me, claiming that I was willfully sabotaging Bonnie's approaching wedding by attempting to stand out with my appearance. Bonnie also jumped in, suggesting that with my weight loss, I was already going to stand out, so did I really need to match her hair color? My father, as usual, agreed with them, telling me that I was being difficult for no reason and that, as Bonnie's sister, I should be more tolerant. I couldn't believe what I heard. It was not about stealing anything, it was about giving myself the freedom to do whatever made me happy. But instead of supporting it, they were all concerned about how it would make Bonnie uncomfortable. "Do you know what? I'm done with this," I murmured, the words almost burning as they left my lips. "The three of you are so wrapped up in your own negativity that you can't even admit I've changed. The reality is, I've always been fantastic just the way I am, but none of you ever noticed. Now that I've lost weight, it's still not good enough for you. No matter what I do, it is never enough." I took time to process what I had just said. They only gazed at me, and it didn't matter. I was done with holding back. "Since you all have so much to say about me, I believe it is time I gave you some unsolicited advice, just like you do to me." I turned to my mother first, feeling the words surge inside me like a deluge. "Mom, I really hate how loose the skin is around your eyes and your lips. They droop on one side when you laugh. I can't help but notice all your crooked teeth, and honestly, it's just disgusting to me." "Dad," I said sharply. "You're bald. You really have no right to say anything about anyone's hair or their hair color. How are you going to criticize someone's looks when you can't even keep a full head of hair?" I noticed his face stiffening, but I wasn't finished yet. Finally, I resorted to Bonnie. "And you, don't ever talk down to me again. Between the two of us, I've always been the better-looking sibling. But now, with all the weight I've lost, you look even fatter than me. Just look at those chubby arms of yours. Bonnie's cheeks flushed with shame, and she appeared to be on the verge of tears. I then hoisted my glass, downed my drink in one go, and walked out with a smirk, leaving everyone stunned and astonished. I said everything I had to say. I couldn't believe these words had come from my mouth, yet I didn't regret them one bit. They deserved to be humiliated after years of being criticized. After lunch, I flew directly back home. I didn't want to stay behind and attend Bonnie's wedding. Since then, my phone has been overloaded with voicemails and texts from my parents and Bonnie. They've been calling me disrespectful and foul-mouthed for how I spoke to them and then left. Mom even insists that I fly down to Bonnie's wedding, claiming that not having me there will make her in-laws unhappy. Update 3. So I ended up skipping Bonnie's wedding. Thanks to all of your suggestions, instead of returning home to attend, I decided to treat myself to an impromptu stay at a 5-star resort. It was truly one of the best moves I'd made in a long time. I spent the weekend doing whatever made me happy, no drama or pressure, just pure enjoyment. I treated myself to a spa day, binge-watched my favorite shows, and even discovered some new sites in the city that I'd been dying to visit. I've also blocked my relatives, so they can't contact me again. I'm weary of being bullied by them and want to avoid all of the poison and drama. Right now, my primary focus is on self-care. I exposed my half-sister for cheating and revealed my father's infidelity, making him lose everything in the divorce as revenge. Edit. Hello. To anyone coming from those other subs, I will remove any comments on my posts that are harsh and intended to bully me. I've already received some, and I see my post has been shared in other areas. I know the sub since I was tagged by an automod. I didn't share my experience of being bullied or called a liar, so screw it. I never asked to be posted on subreddits dedicated to mocking others because you enjoy bullying others. Get a dang life. Here's a life lesson for you neckbeard idiots. Get away from the keyboard. Did the post get removed? It is all here now. So, I, 20 female, have a sister. I'm going to call her Freya, because why not? She's 22. She has cheated often since she began dating, creating an unending circle of infidelity. Her first romance occurred when she was 15, and I was 13. She introduced me to Brad. Sweetheart. Great guy. 2 days later, she spent a significant amount of time in her room with her study buddy. I was not foolish. I figured out what she was doing. Heck, she informed her friends. She boasted to them about it while sitting on our living room couch. As soon as she did it, I realized she wasn't a good person. She disgusted me. When she and her study partner returned to her room, I took a picture via the keyhole in her door. They were simply kissing, gross, but nothing worse. I waited. The next day, I took her phone and obtained Brad's number. I texted him, explaining who I was and why I was messaging him. He did not believe she was cheating. I texted him the picture and begged him not to tell her how he discovered it. He agreed. They broke up. Obviously. She was heartbroken and blamed her pals for telling him. She never suspected me. Why should she? I was the sister who clung to her, imitated what she wore, and observed everything she did. I admired her. I kept up the pretense. I didn't want her to know what I knew or had done. I hoped she learned her lesson. However, she didn't. The next true boyfriend arrived when she was 17 and I was 15. I'd been watching her like a hawk, waiting for the next boyfriend. Nobody would date her for a while after Brad. She was a cheater after all. Even her study companion didn't want to date her because he already had a girlfriend. That condition did not continue longer than a month. After Brad broke up with Freya, someone informed his study partner's girlfriend that he was a cheater. Weird. Anyway, let's introduce Steven. Trusting, maybe a little dim. He saw the best in everyone. She convinced him that she and Brad had only ever kissed, nothing else. I didn't believe it, but whatever. This naive church lad believed she had transformed after only 2 years. Okay. Sure. After a month, I still had no dirt. I started to wonder if she had changed. Bam. She boasted to her buddies about cheating on Steven. I remained hidden. I needed the specifics. I wish I had documented the confession, but I did not. What I did hear was that she was going to meet her side piece at the park the next afternoon. We were both old enough to leave the house whenever we wanted. All we had to do was tell our mother where we were going. The next day, she stated that she was heading to the mall. I stated that I was hanging out with buddies. I waited till she was a few minutes ahead of me before going to the park. I took images of them hugging under a tree. Kissing. Rinse, repeat. Steven pledged to keep the information secret. He handed her the photos, but this time there was no proof of who took them. She would have caught me if I had taken them up close, but those images could have been shot anywhere. They were in the midst of a park. Relationship number 3. Enter the bad dude. I despised him. He was rude, disgusting, and disrespectful. This one was tricky. He was obviously on the rebound, only a few weeks after Stephen, but I got a nasty feeling. I suspected he would be the type to hurt her if she cheated on him. I had to persuade her to end the relationship or have him leave her without blaming her. Even if she was terrible, I needed to plan carefully. I waited for evidence. Do you believe it? They were cheating on each other, with the same guy. I felt calling them out would merely transform them into a throuple. I was mistaken. Bad lad despised the thought of someone knowing he was gay. When he discovered that Freya knew he was bisexual, he fled so quickly that his tires caught fire. 3 down. My sister still didn't know who was exposing her, but she was becoming suspicious. She was ranting about me without realizing it, so I knew. Then she told me her strategy. She planned to tell each of her friends a different narrative and see which one her next boyfriend would get. I helped her make up phony names, descriptions, and locations. It was honestly quite enjoyable. Boyfriend number 4 was not a boyfriend, but rather a guy acquaintance of hers who was involved in the conspiracy. He wanted Freya so desperately that he would do everything to get her attention. She informed friend A she was cheating on 4 with a blonde guy and would see him at the ice cream shop tomorrow. Friend B has brown hair, beach. Friend C has red hair, house. Friend D got bald, Starbucks. Freya wanted me to check out the ice cream shop. Freya stayed at home, while 4 went to Starbucks. No one was on the beach. She reasoned that if none of us observed anything at the sites, then friend B was responsible. We did exactly that. It was hilarious to receive her continuous texts wondering whether anyone had seen someone. She was in a panic. Buddy B had been her best buddy since she was in diapers, and she did not want it to be them. In the end, nobody came up. She yelled at B in a text, accusing them of being a poor friend and alerting her ex-partners about her adultery. B disputed this heavily. But their friendship was in ruins. I supported B, claiming Freya was insane for suspecting them. Friend C supported Freya, saying it was suspicious that A, C and D did not show up at their assigned locations, and reasoning led to B. D felt they were all mad and even blamed me, claiming that if I was the snitch, why would all of the pals have turned up anywhere? They were unable to prove anything because no one was present on the beach. Freya felt offended. She said she would never hurt me, that she loved me too much to do so. We were sisters after all. In the end, D supported A and B because they believed Freya was insane. C remained with Freya. 4 and Freya never became a pair. Freya began dating Freya after believing the rat had disappeared. Poor, sweet Freya. His was the most terrible story since she cheated on him with his twin brother. This occurred when she was 20 and I was 18. Perhaps I was too old for this, but I wasn't finished yet. I was not going to let her ruin a nice guy's life. It took me longer to figure out this one. Twin brothers never question photos on Snapchat. Never question the guy's appearance. Why should they? They were twins. Then Freya shaved his head for a cancer-stricken buddy. His twin didn't? That is how I caught her? I obtained a video of them kissing in his car. Send it to Freya. I wiped my hands clean. He showed her the footage, and she freaked out. She had not informed anyone about the infidelity this time. Not me. Not C. Not 4. And since they were twins, she assumed no one would notice. Finally, she dated 4, the only guy remaining in our small town who was foolish enough to take her seriously. Of course, she did what she always did. She cheated. Here's the problem. I wasn't sure he'd break up with her over it, or if he'd believe it at all. So I waited. Collected evidence. In an unexpected twist of events, I discovered C and 4 cheating. They cheated on her. I submitted 4 images of Freya cheating. I emailed Freya photos of 4 cheating. It burst. She had no pals. Not one. She'd pushed them all away. And now, everyone in our small town knew she was a cheater. You might be asking why I'm telling this story right now. Why are you destroying my sister like this? I detest her. I've loathed her since I was a child. See, we're only half-sisters. Same father, different mothers? Our father cheated on her mom with my mother. My mother, whom I loved, was crippled. And my father had a superior attorney. When I was 5 years old, he abducted me from her. Legally, I assume. But my mother was only permitted visitation, nothing else. I have to see her once a week, for 1 hour. She was not considered safe to have children. When I got older, I would sneak over to her house after school to spend more time with her. My beloved older sister caught me and informed our father. We returned to court. And as a foolish 8-year-old, I told a judge that I despised my father. That he cheated? That guy was filth. That I wished he didn't know me. It was determined that my mother was isolating me from my father. And my visitation was restricted. I was sent to therapy to fix my feelings toward my father. Now, yes, I understand. She was just 10. But she never apologized. Even when I brought it up years later, she found nothing wrong with her actions. My mother died a year later. My father forbade me from attending her burial. My maternal grandparents attempted to push his hand, went to court. But they were shut down. They were instructed that unless they had proof that my father was a bad dad, they should not waste time. My father's wife forgave him. Not too bright, in my opinion. She reared me with him. And I had my sister, who I despised. I pretended not to. Because the best retribution is best served cold. So, why tell this story now? Because my adorable half-sister uses this subreddit. I don't believe she has ever posted, but she lurks. And I'm moving out. I am going to live with my maternal grandparents. Why now, at 20, rather than at 18? Because today, the final nail in my revenge was driven into the coffin. I left photos all throughout the house. Photos of my father cheating on my stepmother, with several women. All are date-stamped, dating back to when they took me in approximately a week ago. Walmart's photo print service was quite helpful. I only want to destroy my father, and my sister. My stepmother, whom I honestly feel awful for, has a prenuptial agreement. If he cheats on her, he will receive nothing. She owns the home. The autos. The summer house. They have a shared bank account, which he may drain. However, to my understanding, the majority of her money is in a separate account. She's super rich. She was wealthy enough to pay for whatever I needed as a child, and she smiled the entire while. I'm not sure if she ever resented me. But she never revealed it. She treated me exactly like my sister. In addition, I left documentation that my sister was aware of our father's infidelity. Proof that my darling sister knew her mother was being cheated on but said nothing. Chat logs. Vocal recordings. Even physical invoices for presents he purchased to keep her quiet. It is all there. Waiting inside the home. Today, both my sister and father are away for the weekend. My stepmother will arrive home in a few hours. And I'll be gone. Even if Freya sees this 10 seconds after I hit post, she won't be able to clean up the mess in time. Okay, I see a lot of questions concerning the keyhole. To explain, my house is really old. Built by the residents of this town, back when dwellings were made by hand. You would just yell, "Help me build," and I'll buy the beer for the day. Unfortunately, they made several poor style decisions. Every bedroom door has a huge hole beneath the handle shaped like a keyhole. It was integrated into the metal plate connecting to the doorknob. The keyholes had no lock-like function. That house was so old that when we renovated it, we discovered knob and tube wiring. What about the insulation? Newspaper. Old bedsheets. Bible pages were torn. And more. There was also a frightening doll. Other unusual design decisions included what my sister dubbed a Coraline door. It once connected to a barn beside the house. But the barn had been gone for several years. And the real kicker? The basement light switch was in a restroom, not near the basement door. The bathroom light switch was located outside the bathroom. The cloth washer drain is linked to the shower, and when the washer is turned on, the shower bubbles up occasionally. To get rid of it, turn on the shower. In the basement, on the ceiling, there are several jar lids tacked to a piece of board because the previous owners used to nail the lids up and screw the jars in to retain nails, screws, and shattered glass. According to my father, the house is filthy, and strange things make little sense. There were other things I can't recall right now, but you assume the keyhole was more prevalent. It turns out it isn't, which surprises me. Edit. Many of you believe that a wealthy lady should live in a nice home. The house we lived in was purchased while she was pregnant with Freya. My father's grandparents and her great-grandfather were the builders, I believe, maybe not. All I know is that it was his family's home for years. He grew up there, but they lost it and had to relocate. He met and married my stepmother, and they stayed with her parents while searching for a home. He saw his old house for sale and begged my stepmother for it. She agreed on the proviso that they only hire labor when absolutely necessary, as her parents trained her to spend money wisely. They had Freya. He made minor repairs to one of the rooms, but no major renovations occurred at the time because they had a baby and were very busy. When they got me, the only repairs I knew about were that mine and Freya's rooms were cold. He opened the wall to inspect the insulation, which was old newspapers. The plan was for me and Freya to remain in their room while my stepmother and father slept on the couch until it was repaired. While doing this, he discovered the knob and tube wiring. We left the house while an expert repaired the wiring throughout the house. Then he finished insulating. When it comes to antique keyholes, my stepmother felt 3 were adorable. The bathroom was the only one that had been fixed. He removed the old-style handle, replaced it with a lockable one, pushed something into the hole, and plastered or painted over it, I'm not sure. We also tore up the 2 layers of carpet and removed the wallpaper from every room. While doing this in the living room, we discovered the Coraline door, as we named it. My father informed me that there used to be a barn immediately next to the home, and he assumed that was where it led. If you opened it now, you'd find nothing because the barn was gone. They hadn't just left an open hole in the wall, there were around 6 layers of wallpaper covering the door. These repairs and changes were always going on, all my father's work, because it was his paper and he understood what he was doing. I don't remember what happened when I was a kid. Also, you appear to believe that children aged 8 to 10 are stupid and incapable of holding grudges, which is absurd. I believe I mentioned that the revenge began at 13. Sure, the problem began at 8, but I had till 13 to stew and be outraged. No, I did not do this because a 10-year-old made an error. I did it because my sister never realized what she was doing was wrong. She told me I had a better family because of it, that my mother was a R, and that she did what was best and right. I despise her for never apologizing or acknowledging how much she damaged me. Edit. You want an update? I promise to give one, but things are hectic right now, so please wait. Question. Should I make a new post for the update or just add it here when I believe it's time? I keep seeing folks enter update me. How does this work? Question 2. Someone advised posting this in the Revenge subreddit. I do not want to copy and paste this. Does anyone who reads more than me know how to share the post or something in such subreddits so that more people may appreciate it? Question 3. I notice now that there has been a cross-post. Is that what I asked you about above? If so, how can I see where it has been cross-posted? I've been enjoying reading comments on Reddit and TikTok and don't want to miss out while waiting for things to settle down. Edit. Whoever dared to send Reddit care after me, sucks to be you. I'm already in therapy, and I learned a long time ago that you don't have to notify anyone until the act is completed. So it's too late for a therapist to try to quell the raging fire in your heart. Edit. I believe you will receive an update sometime today. I was going to update immediately, but I received a call from my therapist a few minutes ago, so I now have an appointment. Is it possible that this is because the video was shared on TikTok? Is there any dread in it? Or is this a coincidence? Update. I have wrecked my sister's relationships and friendships. Now I'm tearing apart her family. Am I pleased about it? Okay, hi everyone, you all requested an update. The original is growing too long, so I'm writing a second post on it. I'll start with my stepmother's reaction. Around the time she would have arrived home, I sat in front of my phone, waiting like a child on Christmas. To my disappointment, all I received was a text message. It said, tomorrow. Lunch, favorite pizza place. It didn't say the exact name, but you get the idea. That was all. I wondered whether she was going to take my life. After some discussion with my companions, I left. Dumb? Possibly. Am I still alive? You could say that. So I met my stepmother at my favorite pizza shop. We ordered, and she smiled at me. It was sort of creepy. She inquired if I understood why she had invited me out. My response was obviously idiotic, but I said, to murder me? She laughed, shook her head, and told me she had spent too much time keeping my dumb buttocks alive to kill me now. She said she invited me since she no longer has a need to keep my father's secrets from me. I, the theatrical dung beetle, asked for information. She provided. I still do not like her, but damn. She inquired whether I knew how my parents met. Obviously, I said no. She said that her cousin, Annie, was hosting a party for her friends and family. Adrian was acquainted with my mom, but she had never met my stepmother or father. My mother was born blind but enjoyed parties anyhow. There was alcohol there, but my mother simply drank pop in a glass with ice. My mother departed early because she didn't want to be away from Freya for too long, while my father stayed. Adrian presented my father and mother. Adrian had no reason to believe anything would occur. Adrian had already become intoxicated. Adrian, according to my stepmother, is unaware of what transpired next. She wasn't sure if my father had brought my mother a fresh cup with something other than pop, if he had dropped something in her drink, or if she had taken the wrong cup. Adrian glanced over and noticed my mother wobbling. In Sam's drunken view, my mother was plainly inebriated. There were a lot of cups on the table, so Adrian imagined Mom had grabbed the wrong cup too often. She brought my mother upstairs to sleep it off. That was the last time she saw my mother that night, though she did see my father a few times. Adrian continued to hang out with my mother, and one day, she revealed that she was pregnant. At the time, my mother was single. Adrian did some mental math and blew out, asking my mother a lot of questions, but my mother laughed it off, claiming she became pregnant after a one-night stand, not at the party. Adrian agreed hesitantly. Adrian cared for both me and Freya when I was born. Her red flags went up again when she saw us side by side, so she took a DNA test, one with me and one with Adrian, figuring that if it was a family member, we would be a slight match. We were not a good match, and she was relieved. Adrian babysat for us again when I was 3 and Freya was 5. According to my stepmother, Adrian couldn't stop staring at us and conducted another test on me and Freya. She received the results, and her heart fell. Freya and I were a match. She remained silent for a while, periodically asking my mother questions, but she couldn't keep it a secret and eventually told my stepmother. My stepmother exploded at my father. He said he was inebriated and confused my mother for her. He claimed there was consent, but it was a mistake that occurred only once. My stepmother agreed to forgive him on the condition that he be a part of my life. She expected him to concede that my mother would not want to be near him, but he and my mother settled in court. My stepmother expressed her dissatisfaction with this, but she accepted it. When I became increasingly alienated from my father, she handed him money for family therapy and playdates. He used this money, plus his own, to hire a lawyer and essentially take me. She couldn't stop him once she knew what he had done. She continued to have little to no interest in me and refused to become involved. My mother died, and she understood something. If she left him now, she would be leaving me with an imbecile who would most likely sell me for a pair of shoes. If she left, she could take Freya, but she had no claim to me, and I never allowed her to adopt me. That was not helping. She attempted to assist my grandparents in fighting for me, but they were silenced. She decided she'd put up with him to protect me. Her words. I don't know if this is real. She claimed she didn't care now that I knew the truth. She was divorcing him and wouldn't have to think about him anymore. I asked her about Freya, and she shrugged, saying her daughter resembles her father too much for her liking. She planned to give Freya a couple options for addressing the issues she observed in her, such as therapy or cutting off contact with her father. But she was going to steal everything from my father, because the prenuptial agreement they signed stated that the cheater gets nothing but the clothing on their back. This is just what I wanted. We left it there. She held me and apologized for not being better, for making so many mistakes, and for making me dislike both her and Freya. She said that if I needed anything, I should let her know. I'm starting to believe I misjudged her. I don't know yet though. We parted ways, and I returned home. I waited and waited before getting a call from my dad. I did not respond. He texted me, stating I was a terrible daughter, that he wanted me out of his house, LOL, and that he never wanted to see me again. He said I destroyed his marriage for a deceased lady he barely knew. He was furious about it, but I texted him back and told him that he had years to stop cheating on my stepmother and not let me catch him. He could have lived the picture-perfect life he believed he deserved. On my mother's behalf, I also used some strong language toward him. Next up came Freya. She did, in fact, locate the post. And did they apologize? Not. She texted me paragraph after paragraph, calling me a manipulative boonies and claiming I spent my life lying to her face about a mistake she made when she was 10. That she did not have to apologize or feel awful. That I should have enjoyed being a member of a new rich family. That I did not need to notify her mother about her father's bribery or her dishonesty. During the discussion, I told my stepmother that it was my fault that she gave Freya the ultimatum to go to therapy, break off contact with Dad, or find another place to live. I merely replied with a laughing emoji and blocked both her and my father. That was all yesterday. It doesn't end there. As some of you know, my therapist phoned me this morning. He inquired whether I had time to meet today. I did, and so I met with him. When I stepped in, he turned his laptop towards me and showed me a TikTok video about me. He questioned, "Is this you?" I couldn't stop laughing. He only shook his head, saying he had a lot more work to do than he expected, but he was smiling. I noticed the smile. He just didn't want to tell me that he felt my retribution was fantastic. I know it. We talked briefly about the problem and how far it was. I disagree, but whatever. I left. Later, my stepmother called and begged for assistance with something. I went to her residence out of curiosity. She told me that her lawyer recommended her to allow Dad time yesterday to come get his belongings and leave. He gathered what he could, and today we were going to make a campfire. I questioned if this was lawyer approved, and she shrugged, stating it was her property regardless. Dad didn't buy any of it and probably couldn't afford a lawyer to fight her. So we tossed a lot of stuff in a mound and let it burn. It was kind of fun. She summoned Auntie Adrian over, who cried and held me because she felt guilty about not telling me. But she despised my father and refused to be near him. I showed my stepmother the text from Freya, and she called Freya, telling her she had only herself to blame. She told her not to blame me since she couldn't stop chasing nice guys away. If she wanted to stay with a wonderful guy, she should stop acting like her unfaithful mess of a father. She informed Freya she had a week to make her decision. She's an adult, and my stepmother can leave her whenever she wants. Then she hung up. My stepmother, Auntie Sam, and I ordered pizza. My stepmother's father called to find out what was going on and why Freya had shown up at their house crying. My stepmother went inside. I'm not sure what she said, but she walked out looking smug and told me not to worry about Freya because he was no longer my concern. I brushed it off and replied, "Whatever. Anyway, the day isn't finished yet, but I've blocked Freya and Dad." My maternal grandparents have confirmed that after my mother died, my stepmother was ready to slip them money to hire a lawyer and fight for me. I confronted her about not assisting them when Mom was alive, but she maintains that she was unaware my father was bringing them to court the second time until it was too late. She also expressed reluctance to contact my mother after assisting in the kidnapping. My stepmother's parents have also advised me not to worry about my father and Luca. If they do anything further after this, they will wish they had licked their wounds and moved on. I'm not sure what my stepmother's parents told Luca, but they appear to be strongly opposed to cheating of any type and believe Freya should do as my stepmother advised. Cut off Dad, seek therapy, and apologize to me. That, I believe, concludes things. It was chaotic for a while, but I'm getting on with my life, washing my hands of Freya and Dad. My stepmother said she entirely understands if I don't want anything to do with her. She said she made a lot of mistakes when I was younger, but she still wants to help me with expenditures and other things. In any case, everyone in my small town is aware of what they have done. Some individuals in my town, not just my therapist, discovered the post, and drama travels quickly. Apparently, I also own it. When people ask me about it, I tell them because I want them to understand what they did to me. I don't believe my stepmother is facing much blowback. She delivered all of the images I printed off to her lawyer, who laughed at the pile and claimed that my mere existence was enough proof for the divorce, but the pile didn't matter. Especially since I wrote dates on many of the photos, some of which were extremely recent. I don't believe this is as nice as the previous post because I never expected to make an update. I kind of just wrote it as it happened. I hope this calms down the drama fans in the comments. If anything more happens, I will probably post it here. There will not be any further updates. I went into labor on my sister-in-law's wedding day, but my mother-in-law locked me in a bathroom to keep me from stealing attention. A few hours later, I awoke in the hospital, and my mother-in-law begged me not to file charges. But, oh boy, her face became pale when my spouse said this. My husband, Rick, 30, and I, 29, were blessed with a daughter 2 weeks ago. This is our first child, and we're understandably thrilled. We've been quite busy, and we're still adjusting to being parents. It's a difficult change for both of us, but we're doing our best. We don't have much support because of what happened on the day our daughter May was born. It was one of the most horrible experiences I've ever had, and I doubt I'll ever forget it. Even the joy of May's arrival is insufficient to help me overcome the paralyzing terror I felt that day. I believe I would have died if not for my husband's immediate assistance. Despite the sad tragedy, I believe that because it involves family, we should be a little kinder to them because May is the first kid in the family. But I'm unsure, and my judgment is muddled by all these hormones and infant obligations, which is why I've turned to Reddit for assistance. Please bear with me while I tell this lengthy and multi-character story. Rick has 2 younger sisters, Anna and Emily. Anna is 28, while Emily is 24. I have a pretty excellent relationship with both of them, and I don't believe there's any hostility between us. We aren't close because we're all busy with our careers and don't get together very often. Emily doesn't even reside in the same city as us, but we try to catch up and stay in touch through messages or phone conversations. Rachel, Rick's 53-year-old mother-in-law, is another significant figure in Rick's family in this story. While I get along well with Anna and Emily, Rachel is a completely different story. We don't always agree, and I believe she has issues with everyone, not just me. She's the biggest control freak you can imagine, and she won't stop. She wants things to proceed according to her wishes and desires. Her 3 children often accept her requests because she reared them after their father abandoned them. So they strive to make things simpler for both her and themselves. Furthermore, if someone dares to demand anything other than what she wants, she reacts, which can range from disapproval and moping to a full-fledged meltdown complete with tears and tantrums. Dealing with her is challenging, so I try to avoid her whenever possible. Rick gets this. He understands that his mother is troublesome, so he lets me keep my distance and deal with her as I see fit. On my end, I understand his feelings for her despite her domineering nature, so I let it go. She doesn't like me, therefore she doesn't interfere with my life, which works well for all of us. However, things spiraled out of control a few days ago, owing entirely to her actions. Now, I don't believe anyone will ever forgive her. Anna was getting married on May's birth date. It was a gorgeous ceremony, and her husband Jonah, 30, is Rick's acquaintance. He proposed to her about a year ago, and Anna asked me to be her bridesmaid. I had accepted. However, when Rick and I discovered I was pregnant, I had to suggest that she ask someone else because I knew I wouldn't be able to handle it. This was about 6 months after the proposal, therefore only 6 months till the wedding. I was 3 months pregnant by then. I expected repercussions from her for backing out midway, but I knew I needed to prioritize. I was very worried and jittery before telling her. I believed our connection would be strained indefinitely. However, to my relief and astonishment, none of it occurred. Anna was pleased when I informed her. She had forgotten about her wedding for a long time. When I told her I wouldn't be available for duty, she said, "Obviously, I'll be taking care of you." She even pondered rescheduling the wedding since she didn't want me to miss it, as I would have if May had been born then. That didn't happen for a variety of reasons, and she probably shouldn't have done it in the first place. It was a close call in the end, but she remained supportive throughout. Emily became the maid of honor, and I knew the two sisters were preoccupied with wedding preparations, so I didn't trouble them much during the pregnancy, which was traumatic for me. Nonetheless, they kept in touch as often as possible and came over to encourage me greatly. I feel a little guilty for not supporting Anna on the most important day of her life, despite the fact that she supported me the entire time. My mother-in-law was the only one who was upset about the situation. I believe Mom was angry that I couldn't be the maid of honor anymore, which caused some disturbance in the wedding preparations. That seemed like the only reasonable explanation, and I understood where she was coming from. However, the antagonism, for lack of a better phrase, persisted even after Anna accepted the pregnancy and my absence as maid of honor. The bride was not upset in the least, but Rachel began antagonizing me from that moment forward. It was strange, but I assumed I was on edge because of the hormones, and she was on edge because of the wedding. I assumed that all of this was simply building false narratives in my head. I ignored her as much as I could, and things were largely all right. During the wedding, things became out of hand, both physically and figuratively. I was completely pregnant, my feet were swollen, my abdomen was massive, and I felt like I was about to pass out. I still wanted to go to the wedding because Anna wanted me there. I had asked her previously whether she wanted me there because I wanted it to be her special day. I informed her that the presence of a heavily pregnant woman might draw attention away from her, something I didn't want. Weddings are for the bride and groom, and I would hate to be the one to take away from that. When I told Anna this, she was outraged and upset. She stated she couldn't believe I'd be preoccupied with such trivial matters and miss her wedding. She said she didn't care about the attention or the limelight. All she wanted was her family to be there for her on her wedding day. She told me I needed to come and not worry about the drama. I knew she meant it. She's not one to mince words. If she didn't want me there, she would have said so right away. But she did, and she stated it emphatically. I felt it was my obligation to be there for her. Despite my physical discomfort, I felt I needed to be present for her on her wedding day. I'm not going to lie, there were a lot of people whispering, but I tried to ignore them because I knew Anna was glad I was present. That was all that mattered to me at that moment. Rachel did not say much to me and glared at me the entire time. However, I was too uncomfortable to notice. I didn't have the energy to cope with her or understand her passive-aggressive conduct toward me, so I just let her be. She might glare all she wanted, I was not going to respond to her. Then came the big episode, which stunned and terrified everyone around me. I started feeling apprehensive just as the ceremony was about to commence. By then, I'd already met Anna. I got up and went upstairs, believing it would make me feel better and that I'd return when I did. Rachel had followed me without my knowledge. I went to the bathroom because I was sweating and feeling strange. Suddenly, my water burst. It was a literal flood, and I began to panic because, as much as I adore my daughter, she had picked the worst possible time to arrive. I couldn't think clearly. Thankfully, I noticed my mother-in-law in front of me. By then, I was crouching in agony. She raced to me, And I ordered her to take my phone and call Rick right away because we needed to hurry to the hospital. She helped me up and had me sit in the restroom. I gave her my cell phone. That is when she flipped. She claimed she'd make sure Rick arrived in an hour after the ceremony was complete since she didn't want me to take Anna's attention. I asked her if she was crazy and told her I couldn't take this for an hour. I tried to grab my phone from her, but she locked me inside and took it with her. So there I was, pregnant, with my child actually on the way, sitting on a toilet in a bathroom, without a phone or a spouse. I'm not sure how I didn't suffer a full-blown panic attack. Thank goodness I didn't, since I'm not sure what would have occurred otherwise. I stood up and slowly made my way to the door. I began beating on it. I yelled repeatedly. But no one heard me because the restrooms were on the first floor and everyone had already taken their seats for the ceremony. I screamed till my voice faded, but no one came. That was when I truly believed I was going to die, and take my baby with me. I was weary, wet, sweating profusely, and unable to speak. That was the last thing I remembered. I'm not sure what happened afterward. I passed out from tiredness. I can't recall how I got to the hospital. I know I did. A few hours later, I awoke in the hospital, sobbing with Rick by my side. It took me a few moments to figure out where I was and what was going on. When I noticed Rick crying, I expected the worst. Everything came flooding back, my mother-in-law locking me in the bathroom, my crying. And I believed May hadn't made it. When Rick saw I was awake, he breathed a sigh of relief and began crying in my arms. I had no idea what to make of it and felt a terrible feeling in my stomach. Then I saw the nurse enter with a baby girl, and I breathed a sigh of relief. I really wanted to hit Rick for messing with me like that. But he said he wasn't toying with me. He was just glad I was okay because I was unconscious when he found me in the restroom. I held my baby for the first time, and I don't think I'll ever forget the feeling. I don't think there is a better emotion in life. Nothing will ever compare to what I felt in those moments. Rick didn't offer me any specifics at the time, which I appreciate because I didn't have the energy to cope with it. I could hear a commotion outside and asked him what was going on. He stated his mother-in-law was outside and wanted to come in to see her grandchild. I described what had transpired in full. I told him what she had done, and how she had put our daughter in jeopardy for no reason. I also told him that I would never let her near my daughter. To me, she was dead. He said he knew everything. When he found me in that state, she broke down and told him everything. I told him that just because she broke down didn't mean I'd forgive her. He chuckled and stated his mother was dead to him from this moment forward, and he was going to file charges for endangering life. He stated that he would pursue legal action to ensure that she was punished for what she had done. When I heard him say that, I felt a weight lifted off my shoulders. I know he adores his mommy. All three of them do. After the trick she pulled that may have cost me and my daughter our lives, I was in no mood to forgive her. If Rick had chosen her over me, our marriage would have ended. There would be no turning back, and somewhere deep down, I expected him to choose his mother. Despite everything, Mom worked extremely hard to raise them. Maybe I didn't expect him to defend me the way he did, but I'm not complaining. If anything, it has increased my affection for him, if that's possible. I questioned him about the wedding, and he claimed it went well. Emily and Anna were waiting for him to call so they could come visit us. When I inquired if Anna was furious, he laughed and said I didn't have to worry about her at all. She had been smiling with pride and delight, saying that her entire family had attended the wedding and that May's birth was the nicest gift she could have gotten. I had tears in my eyes when he told me that, and I told him to call them right away. Anna, Emily, and Jonah arrived at the hospital shortly after I did. The best part, Anna and Jonah were still dressed for their wedding. Anna refused to pass up the opportunity to snap a wedding photo with her niece. I started crying uncontrollably. It was a truly heartwarming moment. After taking the image, I apologized to Anna for destroying her day. She hugged me and told me I was misinterpreting the situation. I had made her day. I told her about my mother-in-law's actions after we announced the pregnancy. Anna stated that the only thing I did wrong was not informing them sooner. Perhaps they could have put an end to her turmoil. I told her I didn't want to cause trouble, and Emily responded that any amount of difficulty was fine as long as I was safe. Even as I type this, I have tears in my eyes because I realize they love me like family. They saw me as more than Rick's wife. I was a family member. Anna is one of the best women I know. She is so safe and happy. It's no surprise she is where she is today. I don't see how Rachel is so different from her children. It's as if they saw her and concluded that was not who they wanted to be. It's odd, but I don't mind. It was beautiful. Apparently, my mother-in-law was still outside. Anna had informed her on her way in that she would ensure Rick and I filed charges. My mother-in-law wanted to come in and see May, but I didn't want her anywhere near me. Anna stated we needed to protect ourselves from her. She apologized to me, saying she hadn't adequately addressed her mother's overprotective impulses or made it obvious that she had no objections to my pregnancy. She stated that if she had, perhaps the situation could have been avoided. I told her she had made me feel safe, and there was no way she was to blame. Rick was outside the entire time, conversing with my mother-in-law. When I was discharged and returned home with May a few days later, Rick informed me what he and my mother-in-law had discussed. He claimed he had informed her that he would be filing charges and that she could deal with it because nothing would change that. He also warned her she was never welcome in May's life. She was not her grandmother, in any way. She opted to endanger my and my unborn child's lives over a perceived slight that didn't even bother her. He also stated that the money he had been giving her, my mother-in-law was living off of Rick and Emily's money, would be significantly decreased. She burst into tears, stating she had worked her entire life for her children and did not deserve this. Rick said that, while he recognized and appreciated everything Mom had done for them, she did not have control over their life. He said she was in the wrong and that he had been ignoring or making excuses for everything she did for years, but no more. When it came to May and me, she needed to realize she had crossed a significant line and demonstrated she was not safe to be around, especially because Anna had never had an issue. Rachel explained that, as a mother, she understood Anna's reluctance to have me in the spotlight. But Anna overheard and ripped into her. So, we will definitely proceed with the lawsuit. But Rick is managing it because I have a newborn to care for and cannot be bothered with the drama. Rick said he'd handle it. None of the siblings are willing to speak with her anymore. Anna has entirely cut her off, and Emily only speaks with her when necessary. Rick and I are clearly out of touch. I don't believe my mother-in-law anticipated this. Maybe she honestly wanted to protect Anna, no matter how twisted that seems. I am not defending her in the least. But I still feel awful for her since it all went so wrong. Now, part of me wonders whether they should discuss it with her because it feels wrong and horrible to me. I do not know, maybe I'm not thinking clearly. I know if I mention this to Rick, he'll go crazy. He is irritated with her and is unable to look at her right now. I had not anticipated this, yet here we are. Update 1. Well, any reconciliation is out of the question forever. I realize I haven't updated in a while, but, well, I'm a new mother. I've been busy keeping both myself and my child alive. The good news is that May turns 8 weeks old in a few days, and we're all very excited. Anna and Jonah have been a great help to Rick and me. Emily had to return to work but still calls practically daily. May is truly the light in everyone's eyes. They adore her, and the group chat is filled with her photos. There has been no communication with my mother-in-law. I persuaded Rick not to press charges since we had too much on our plates and it would serve no purpose. Rick was reluctant, but he consented because neither of us had the energy to do anything else. When we told my mother-in-law, she seemed grateful. I say appeared, because the woman is indeed insane, and she showed everyone her true colors shortly after. Rick and I awoke about 1 a.m., a loud banging on the door. I assumed it was a heist, so I fled and hid with May as Rick attempted to open the door. I could hear shouting, but I didn't dare go outside since I didn't want May to wake up. It was my mother-in-law, and Rick said she was being insane. She continued to scream that she wanted to see May and that we couldn't keep her away. Rick claimed he had to scare her with the cops before she backed down. She was trying to force her way inside. We quickly notified Anna and Emily because if anything was wrong with her, everyone wanted to know. We were concerned, but in the end, it was for nothing. The following day, she sent us a frightening text. She began by claiming that we were being mean and horrible to her by not allowing her to see May, and that we were punishing her for doing nothing but being a mother. There was more melodramatic gibberish in there, and her text became increasingly crazy. She stated that she had the responsibility of raising 3 children and had to always choose one child's needs above another. That's what she thought she had to do for May's birthday. She did not want May to ruin Anna's day. She conveniently forgot that May was a fetus, and that Anna herself had stated several times that she had no objections to the pregnancy and wedding taking place concurrently. I still comprehended this section. What she said next startled me. She expressed concern that having May in our lives would make her less valuable to her children. When I revealed my pregnancy, she assumed Anna would be upset since that is how a normal woman would react. But when she realized how enthusiastic we were about both the pregnancy and the wedding, she wasn't pleased. She was basically indicating that she didn't enjoy how happy we were together, with and for each other. She wanted us to be jealous and competitive. She stated that when she discovered the due date was close to the wedding, she hoped Anna would be upset with us and that May would not dominate everyone's attention. But it did not happen, and everyone was just talking about May. She said she felt disrespected that a baby who hadn't even been born had stolen her position as the siblings' unifying force. She continued to type while I requested Rick to block her. I told him she was insane and dangerous to me and all of us. I've got a continual headache since I saw those messages. I can't believe a woman over 50 is competing with a 7-week-old infant. It doesn't make sense to me, and it doesn't need to. Because I'm done with her. I'm done making excuses for her actions and attempting to understand her intentions. I don't care if she ends up in hell. We forwarded the messages to Anna and Emily, who are also upset. They suspect she is experiencing a manic episode. Emily stated that she will travel down to have my mother-in-law checked at a facility. I think that's a terrific idea, but I'll remain out of it. This is insane behavior, and I no longer want anything to do with her. Update 2. We have a restraining order against my mother-in-law. She did not try anything else, but we are being cautious. Emily had her tested and met with both a psychologist and a psychiatrist. Everything is okay with my mother-in-law. She was diagnosed with generalized anxiety disorder, but that was all. The doctor stated that there was no underlying medical basis for her behavior and advised Emily to seek therapy. Emily has since made no touch. She stated she would be eager to help if something was wrong, but my mother-in-law is cruel, and she can no longer stand her. I completely understand and share your point of view. If she had a psychological problem, she may have received my sympathies and help in a few months. But once that's ruled out, we know who she is. There is no way to reconcile it. This is why we sought a restraining order. May's safety is extremely important to Rick and me, and my mother-in-law has proven herself to be dangerous twice. Furthermore, she harbors animosity for May in particular, so we must take extra precautions to keep them apart. I believe this will be my final update, and I hope I never have anything further to say about the entire episode.